Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another session of Staffordshire County Council. Before we start, I'd like to call on my chaplain, please, the Reverend Bott.
Thank you, Chairman. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. You have called us, O God, to be your people. You have loved us and chosen us for your own. Clothe us with your compassion, your kindness, your humility, your gentleness and patience. Help us to forgive one another as you have forgiven us, and bind us together in the perfect unity of your love, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Almighty God, the giver of all good things, without whose help our work is ineffectual, and without whose grace all wisdom is folly, grant, we pray, that in all our work for this council, we may be strengthened by your love and guided by the Holy Spirit, through Christ the Lord. Amen. Amen. I invite you to join with me, if you wish, in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Chairman. Father, can I thank you for the prayers that you've given us throughout the year? And from everybody here, can I wish you and your family a happy Christmas?
Thank you very much. And to you also.
Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. Pardon? Oh, yeah. Thank you, everybody. Item on the agenda, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Mr. Chairman, we have received apologies from the following members: Richard Cox, Richard Ford, John Francis, Thomas Jay and Jill Waring.
Thank you. Before I continue, you'll see in front of you your buttons. There are initials on your buttons. There are two buttons in front of most people. Can you please make sure you press the one with your own initials on? Because it causes so many problems. Particularly the cabinet members, because they speak more than anybody else. Well said. Well, he said no excuse. Okay, item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare an interest? Councillor DeVille?
Declare an interest as a director of Nexus, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Whittington?
The interest as a non-executive director of Nexus Cares.
Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 13th of October 2022 be signed as a true record. Is that agreed? Thank you. Chairman's correspondence. On this occasion, there are no items of Chairman's correspondence. Item 5, statement of a leader of the Council. Councillor Alan White, will you move consideration of your statement, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. Have I pressed the correct button for you?
No, there's no button pressed, according to this. I can move it. Yes, you have now.
I move the statement of the Leader of Council.
Thank you. Item 1, Staffordshire means back to business. Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much. The leader pressed my button for me, so I'm confident. Thank you very much, Chair. The report this month is I think particularly important as we're entering a time nationally where I think it's generally recognised that we're beginning a recession in the country as a whole. The indicators are that it will be a shallow one, but perhaps one that lasts for quite some time over the course of 2023. But the Staffordshire economy is in a strong position. We continue to be an area that businesses want to invest in, an area with very strong levels of employment. And I think the two major strategic projects that are mentioned in this item really illustrate that. So we have our proposals to government for the A50-A500 hydrogen technologies corridor, which runs principally through Staffordshire and Derbyshire, where we have some of the world's leading manufacturers making things go using hydrogen at JCB, Toyota, Alstom, and Rolls-Royce. The innovation, the investment zones that the government had asked us to bid for have been withdrawn by government, but they are now looking at bringing forward a smaller number of knowledge-intensive new investment zones. And we think that this corridor is a very good candidate for that, and we're continuing to work with our partners on bringing that forward. Decarbonising our economy and creating new jobs for people in Staffordshire and in the wider Midlands, it's really important work. And the second strategic investment here, the West Midlands Interchange, probably the largest logistics development in the whole of Europe at the moment. Again, decarbonising our economy, taking freight off the road, putting it onto trains, and with major development there, 8,000 jobs going to be created on the site, and over 8,000 more in the construction of it, and with a large skills package secured to train such people. But the thing that links the two, and it links to one of our items later in the agenda, is these are major investments that are geared towards decarbonising our economy, but not wearing a hair shirt whilst we do it, creating jobs, skilled jobs, well-paid jobs here in Staffordshire. And they're good examples of the things that our economy is doing, powering ahead as we enter perhaps a little bit of a turbulent time nationally in our economy. Thank you.
Councillor Keith Lunder, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to really support this whole drive that we're sort of aiming towards at the moment to try and improve people's work experiences and also the opportunities that are in Staffordshire and in the surrounding area. Under my regen hat, as it were, at Staffordshire Moorlands, I've had some meetings and had a meeting with Philip this morning. I think it's essential that district councils now should work much harder together. I would like to announce this morning we had some very good news on Tuesday, and the Shared Prosperity Fund application that we put in has been granted to us. So we've now got some £3.4 million plus now to put into projects and to put into what we can do to help our businesses and the infrastructure that we have within the Moorlands to create new jobs and new experiences, which I think is a great move forward. I'd like to thank Central Government. We have got 3 more bites of the apple yet to go forward, so we're hoping to hear about those in the not too distant future as well. Just to let colleagues know that we have put together recently a new tourism strategy, which will be going forward to our next full council meeting up at the Moorlands. And we've been working together with many of the towns and everything else on workshops, which has been quite a new experience for us in the Moorlands, actually having some good consultation. We've just passed a new policy about how we're going to try and improve consultation in the future. We are now also looking at working with colleges and universities to improve skills and everything else around the whole of the district, and a lot of that might well be outside our own district as well. We have various other policies that we've got to go forward in, and I'm hoping to be able to work with Simon, although I didn't have much chance to talk to him so far, about improving digital connectivity across the whole of our rural area. It's fairly good in the towns, but there's some mixed messages that we've been getting, which we received at last night's meeting. So that message has been well received, and we will be working on that, as in fact I promised at last night's meeting. Great to hear about the hydrogen corridor and everything else that we're doing down there, the A50, A500 corridor, which is again a small section of it was in with the Moorlands, so we will try and promote that one. So in general, we've got a very limited time now between now and the end of this coming financial year to be able to work very closely with the County Council, but other colleagues as well, such as organisations like JCB, Alton Towers and all the others that are very important to us within the Moorlands. So we've got to really try and put the metal to the pedal, put the old accelerator down. Got that wrong there, sorry about that. I'll get there eventually, you guys. You know what I mean. You know what I mean on that one, that's fine. But we need to press the old accelerator. Yeah, don't come driving with me. It might be a different experience if you press the wrong button on me. Anyway, so yeah, we need to get the old accelerator down. Try and get this funding into sensible and really good areas that we can get some regeneration going. So I just wanted to let the council know that we are working very hard in the Moorlands, and we were working very closely with the County Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Syed Hussain, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the briefing, Cabinet members. Can I just ask that if I can seek his attention on page 20, paragraph 1, at the very last point in there, there were the increasing claimants from 18 to 24 that mentioned that there is no, and the reason for increasing number of the claimant is not entirely clear. Whether this is not known why they are claiming, can the Cabinet member inform us when the actual reasons revealed why the increasing number of the claimant going up? At the same token, can I just also ask the Cabinet member what more can be done to ensure that they will get the proper support in terms of getting the training and the skills for the futures. Unfortunately, those 18 to 24 years old young persons, they are facing very big difficulties, whether standing on their feet to get a proper job or going to the property ladder in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Tagg, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I really welcome this report. And particularly, I'm sure the Deputy Leader would agree with me that our town centres are a really important part of that, getting back to business and that regeneration. I would just like to ask the Leader of the Council if he would today commit in this meeting to work closely with Newcastle Borough Council on the regeneration of the Rycroft site, and also make sure that his officers interact at the right level and bring about that joint working that we need on that site so we can deliver that regeneration, because at the moment it doesn't feel like that.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Hudson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I really welcome the report, and particularly the A50, A500 hydrogen corridor. This will have a significant positive impact on Uttoxeter, which I represent as the County Council, and also the Borough of East Staffordshire, of which I'm Mayor. I'm really looking forward to that, and it'll have a big impact on both our economy and increasing in skills. And also, it's nice to know that we're looking at an alternative to electric, particularly in an area where we have a lot of agricultural machinery, which I think would probably be better served by hydrogen. And I would also ask the Deputy Leader if he will work with the Borough of East Staffordshire with the regeneration of the maltings in Uttoxeter, which I know is coming up for discussion in the new year, where there will be consultations to the public, and it would be great to have some input from you, please, Councillor White, on some of your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark DeVille.
Chairman, thank you. And I thank the Deputy Leader for that excellent report, Chairman. And I share Mr Hudson and Mr Flunder's positivity around our area. Tremendous wave of positivity, Chairman. England are in the quarterfinals. Portugal are in the quarterfinals, our great allies. Mr Flunder was speaking about the exciting developments in the Staffordshire Moorlands. Thank you, Keith, for that. And, Mr Chairman, you'll have heard me say on many, many occasions that small businesses are the lifeblood of the heartbeat of Staffordshire, but so are the large businesses. And I'm delighted, Chairman, to hear that you recently visited the fantastic new cab manufacturing plant at Uttoxeter, which Mr Hudson will agree is a great source of jobs in the Uttoxeter area, the Tean area, and our area of Staffordshire Moorlands. And I'm sure all members of the Staffordshire Moorlands, all of us, feel really optimistic about the future with the funding bids that have been granted, with the funding bids that are positively pending. Any opportunity I get of speaking up JCB, you know I will, Chairman. Thank God for JCB in our area, the jobs that they produce. Thank God also for Alton Towers, Keith, you're right. Alton Towers is the source of a tremendous number of jobs, particularly for our young people in our area. So isn't it great to hear such positivity in the Moorlands and right across Staffordshire, Chairman?
Thank you, and well said. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We're moving in 2023 into a new world that perhaps those of us of a certain age will remember the past and when we've been through similar situations. But economic development is going to be crucial to us. Economic development is hard won and easily lost. And if we, as Staffordshire County Council, which has a superb economic development team, doesn't have districts and boroughs that are 100% committed to investment and development in every single way. It's sad to say that in some areas, and I don't wish to name where, we still have a 60s attitude where almost development is repelled on the basis that it's not necessarily good for you. We've got to go out and we've got to grab hold of every single opportunity. Development is very, very hard won and is easily lost. And if we don't, as a team and working together with our district and boroughs, grab and embrace every single opportunity, Staffordshire will lose out. Thank you, Chairman.
Leader of the Council, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and thank you for those comments, and thank you to the leader, Deputy Leader for all that he's doing working in economic development. I'd like to add my praise to the economic development team here at Staffordshire County Council and all the great work they do in partnership with the LEP and others, Chambers of Commerce, FSB. It is a tremendous amount of work that they do, and we sit on the legacy of the work of others. Councillor Winnington over there, having held the portfolio previously, and I thank him for his work creating those foundations. We want to continue to work with districts and boroughs across the county to improve the outlook for the towns and the city of Lichfield across the county. I know that Councillor White is spending a great deal of time liaising with district and borough councils about what we can do together. And I've been visiting this past week various locations around the county just to see what we can do together. So I was in Codsall on Monday afternoon, seeing the great work of the new library there and the co-location of the police, the county council and the district council there. I was in Newcastle late last week, in Castle House, seeing there how tremendous that integrated working is. We are committed to working together with our districts and boroughs in a way that's mutually beneficial to us and to the districts and boroughs across the county. When we work together properly, we get mutual benefit. If we pull in opposite directions, then none of us really gets much benefit, and more importantly, the people we represent don't get a great deal of benefit. I just want to turn to Councillor Hussein's comments about the unemployment numbers for young people, which are always a concern, and thank you for raising that. We do need to remember that the younger people in the county do tend to occupy occupations where there is a higher level of turnover, particularly in places like hospitality. So sometimes those numbers are slightly higher as a result of that churn. But I would also like to point out that the numbers of young people who are not in education, employment or training, they're known as NEETs in the jargon, are very low in this county, and it's a tribute to our colleges and our schools that is the case, and we continue to work with them throughout. So, Mr Chairman, I finish as I started, which is by thanking the teams for the great work that they do and to paying tribute to Councillor White for the hard work that he's putting in to drive forward the economic development across the county.
Thank you very much. Item 2, Integrated Performance Report, Quarter 2, 2022-23. Councillor Charlotte Atkins, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. The government's autumn statement has delayed by 2 years the adult. Will that have an impact on the County Council's recruitment of social care assessors? And will the County Council be advising those people who no longer have a cap on their care costs about options for the future? But the paper itself, if you look at the Cabinet report paper, also talks about homes for Ukraine. And I've written to the leader and to the chief executive about this. You'll be aware of the financial problems that some hosts are having, particularly those who have maybe up to 5 Ukrainians staying with them in their houses. And has the County Council considered assisting them further over and above the £350 a month they get from government to help those people in particular who have maybe a lot of teenagers and adults in the home who are struggling with costs of fuel and so on over these next winter months? And I'd be interested to see whether you saw my email and whether you have considered that or whether it's going to be going to Cabinet later on this month. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Gillian Passazy, please.
Thank you, Chair. We're told that adult social care continues to be an area of financial risk. And when will this administration and government accept that using reserves and putting up council taxes is not a long-term solution, that the adult social care system, we need to reset the button on the whole thing. It is broken, and we all know that that is having a massive impact on the way our NHS is able to operate right now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Victoria Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just in answer to the member's question regarding Ukrainians and the support that we offer here at Staffordshire County Council for them, the funding that we have is directed towards the sponsors as opposed to the families. Let me get that right. The funding we offer is actually for the Ukrainians themselves rather than to the sponsors, although there is discretionary help where it's absolutely needed. If the member refers to the questions in the supplement here, there is a staff team that does provide outreach support to the sponsors and to the families, and there is also a raft of help that's offered to them as a whole. But yeah, the funding generally goes to the Ukrainian themselves.
Thank you. Councillor Julia Jessel, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Can I first of all say that I do refute the fact that the social care system is broken. It isn't broken, it's operating very well. It has its challenges, as have a lot of areas of our lives. There are some extremely dedicated people who work in social care, whether it's in care homes, nursing homes, home care, social care assessments, and actually it's demoralising if people keep repeating the headlines of the what I call the trash media, although I think they're all in the same category, and keep driving. It's broken, it's not. We have to keep working, as we do, diligently, looking at what we provide and how we provide it. We endeavour here at Staffordshire County Council to provide the best quality service to those who rely on it, and to ensure that it's done in the most efficient and effective way. Some people think that those two elements cannot live in harmony. We have to make sure we spend taxpayers' money in the most effective way, and there is an item at number 4, which again is how we're working through that. But one of the key things that we're trying to do within this local authority is to help and encourage and facilitate people to remain as independent and as healthy as possible. And if I can take a little bit of a liberty, Chairman, there is there a bag of tricks. This is what is available for people to look at our help points that they can purchase themselves at very little cost to help them retain that independence, which I'm sure is something we all want. It's for members to look at just in case they weren't aware. But in terms of our discharges from hospital, I know in some areas that there are some real problems. Can I say that in Staffordshire County Council, and I had a briefing yesterday, that actually we have very, very few delays to discharge of care, and we're operating well above our target performance within the timescale set. So we are working carefully. Undoubtedly, there are challenges. There is with home care, and that's why this authority approved the setting up of the enhanced home care service, which will be an in-house service to which we're already recruiting to address that. Where the market is not satisfying the needs, we are not afraid to actually set up a service ourselves. So I do implore people, there are people out there, particularly in social care, who feel undervalued and permanently under the hammer. They're not. We try and support them to support their careers, their work-life balance. We appreciate the fact that pay is part and parcel of that, but I do ask that we don't permanently talk the service down. There is some tremendous work that is carried out, and I think it's incumbent on us all to actually acknowledge that and appreciate that. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Parry, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm still wondering why Councillor Jessel referred to a bag of tricks and pointed at the opposition. I'm not sure. Oh, is that what you meant? Sorry. Chairman, we're not using reserves to support adult social care. We're using reserves at the moment to address the pressures of inflation, which are around £50 million this year, and may continue to grow some more. So we're having to use reserves for that. That's a fair use of reserves, I think. In terms of adult social care, it's always an area where we have to respond to growing demographic and other pressures upon it. But it's unfair, as Councillor Jessel says, that people, as they are this morning on the national news, obsessing, perhaps rightly, about discharge from hospital and seeing this as a local government, a council social care issue, rather than an issue in the round. And it works best, I think, where there is that integration. But as Councillor Jessel has been saying, this is a much bigger operation than the discharge side of it, than the post-hospital care. We fail often to refer to the pre-hospital, the reasons why people are admitted. And I think we've all had experience of loved ones and family who've been elderly, that is, who've been admitted to hospital for what you might consider to be a reason that could have been sorted by perhaps a GP visit on site at the care home or whatever, and would have resolved the issue. But the lower risk appetite almost, that means they get taken to hospital in the back of an ambulance and spend however long it takes and then have to be discharged. You wonder whether it's the cycle itself that is partly the cause of all of this. The next phase on this, the next chapter, the next point on this report talks of Nexus, and that's an important innovation by this council. And again, as Councillor Jessel has already said, about the preparedness of this council to intervene where necessary. And that's clearly where this council felt it was necessary to intervene in the market where it saw it not being able to respond adequately. And we picked that up and effectively now running a really efficient and cost-efficient and effective service in part of that social care universe. So it's not a simple matter. It's an area that is a duty on this council. It's, if you combine adults and children together, the total spend from this council is over 50%, getting towards 60% of the total budget. So it's what we're here for. That's, you know, we look after people. We try and do our best. But whereas for children, apparently it takes a village to raise a child, but I'm not sure it should take the state to raise the elderly.
Thank you. Lead the council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we want to do anything about national problems, it requires national consensus. If we look at, say, smoking in public places, there was a national consensus that something needed to be done, and everybody got behind it, and it happened. There's a national consensus that we need to think about how we look after our elderly and how that care comes about. But where we don't have a national consensus is how that will be achieved. Because it is a place where people take political potshots, and it happens on both sides of the aisle. If we go back to 2010, Gordon Brown's attempt to do it was labelled the death tax. If we go to 2017, Theresa May's attempt to do it was called the dementia tax. We know something needs to be done, but what we've not been able to do is construct a national consensus about how the problem gets solved. And I think rather than people standing up and taking potshots about one approach being right or one approach being wrong or the services being inadequate, let's try and work towards a political consensus about what the solution looks like and then push together in the same direction so that we can actually achieve it. Because the division around how we look after our elderly, which we have a responsibility to do because they've put a lot into this country during their lifetimes, that responsibility is on us and existing politicians to create that national consensus. And I look forward to the time when that happens, Mr. Chairman. Sadly, it doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon, but maybe sometime in the future.
Thank you. Item 3, Nexus Trading Services Limited, Annual Report 2021-22. Councillor Mark Whittington, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's really important, particularly as we come up to the festive season, to think about those who are most vulnerable. And I think this morning we've already started down that route, and some interesting speeches from Julia Jessel and from Ian Parry about the importance of looking after our most vulnerable people. And obviously a lot of those are elderly relatives. I've got one at the moment who's having care packages. And the system is good. It's slow in places, but it works really well. So I hope that the opposition takes that on board. Just, if you bear with me, please, Chairman, just a bit of history. Nexus Trading was actually started up, and myself and John Tradewell put a lot of time into starting this arm's length company. It was originally designed to be a property company, just to give you a little bit of history there. And then 5 years ago, I think myself and John and one or two others were approached because we wanted to set up a company that will deal with reablement. Now, I think that Staffordshire County Council showed a lot of foresight then to actually think about not just we've got a problem, oh dear, we've got a problem, but we've got a problem, what can we do about it? And it's always been the ethos of the council, not just to look at a problem, but sort of say, we can fix it, how are we going to do it? And that's what happened then. So we set up this company, this Nexus Cares. We did a lot of work around what the problem was. Obviously, the NHS were having problems with bed blocking. Still a problem. As we get an elderly, a lot more elderly people, we're going to have this problem and it's going to carry on. So how could we deal with it? And we set up a lot of protocols, and we looked towards technology. And Nexus Cares is probably one of the few places in the country that relies heavily on technology using phones, using iPads and the like to make sure that they're as efficient as possible. We've got to a point now where we've got a company that's got a turnover of £8.5 million. And the real point of me standing up here is that that's only happened because of the council have put the foresight in. But more importantly, right the way from the chief operating officer, right the way down to every carer, there's an enthusiasm and a keenness to make this work. And that's important, really important. In terms of the highlights, they're in the paper. They kept the care going through the pandemic. Not just Nexus here, all of the care services did a fantastic job. Without them, things would have been so much worse for elderly people and vulnerable people. They helped roll out the lateral flow tests. Again, it's history now, but we all remember how important those flow tests were and how many people were lined up ready to take a lateral flow test. They took on, Nexus Cares, 2 homes which were ailing and the company was going was less than solid. They took on these 2 care homes, something new for the team, but they did it. So again, fantastic. And as I say, they've embraced digital transformation. Really important, and I do know that the council's looking at some of the work that's been done there and how it's provided and the great job that they're doing. And I would just ask this chamber to recognise the work that the staff do at Nexus Cares, right the way from the top down to the bottom, as I've said, and please wish them a happy Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Charlotte Atkins, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. It's really good to see that Nexus is doing so well and expanding. In particular, expanding into home care services and reablement. But the focus of this activity so far appears to be in the south and the east of the county. And my question is, are there plans to extend these additional services to the north of the county? And secondly, I note from the report that there was a 64% turnover of Nexus Care staff. So therefore, I'm interested in what's being done to attract more staff and just as importantly, to retain existing staff, because that turnover obviously can't be sustained. Hopefully, that turnover is now reduced, but I'd be interested to hear the conclusions of that particular issue.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Jill Hood, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to touch on the human aspect of Nexus Care, of which I'm very familiar with. The staff, Councillor Atkins has already said that there's a high turnover. There is a high turnover of staff, but they are amazing. They go way above the call of duty. And it made me giggle when Councillor Winnington talked about their technology. I've often seen these carers struggling with the technology, but my gosh, they certainly master it. Totally disagree about social care isn't broken. It is totally broken. And I watch these carers personally chasing their clients who are queuing in hospital outside in an ambulance. They call them, they call the relatives, they go round to houses. Very often some of their clients can't come out of hospital because there's nowhere for them to go. But gosh, this company is absolutely amazing. And, you know, Mr Winnington just said that it's successful because of the way the County Council has funded it, financed it. But I'd like to say that it's successful because these carers are renowned for their good service, and word of mouth wants people to actually employ them as carers. They are remarkable. And yes, it's lovely to wish them a happy Christmas, but please think about these carers who are racing from home to deliver the care that they are so good at and so professional at. And I would like to support Mrs Pardesi and say that we need to pay these carers what they're worth. They are totally undervalued financially. And if you think about the roles, the detail in the role that they carry out with their clients, they are remarkably professional and are asked to do jobs that probably a huge amount of us would bulk out and say, no, we don't want to do that. But they are remarkable. They spread sunshine, and I can only praise Nexus Care. So thank you to this County Council for Nexus.
Thank you. Councillor Johnny McMahon, please.
Thank you, Leader. I want to take this opportunity of thanking Nexus during the pandemic. There is little doubt that they're using the lateral flow test throughout the whole county, not just the south. They broke chains of transmission, and in doing so, they saved lives. And they're to be commended for it. And I really want to echo the sentiment of Joe Hoods, that these people really go above and beyond the call of duty. Their work is exemplary, and we really have to give thanks to them. And I want to talk about the technology piece just for a second. There's a joke in the NHS that there is a fax machine company in the centre of China, and its only customer is the British NHS. We don't use, in terms of care, technology nearly enough. And the fact that Nexus is spearheading that and using technology to full advantage is to be fully supported, and thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark DeVille, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, colleagues, for those kind words about Nexus. I'm extremely proud, Chairman, to play a very, very small part in that organisation. Thanks particularly to Mrs. Hood. Speaking of the Nexus people, the real people who do the work. It's not about buildings, this isn't. It's not about equipment, it's about people. And you're right, Mrs. Hood, our people are magnificent. I hate the term, anything is broken, because all that does is demoralise people. It demoralises our wonderful staff that Mrs. Jessel and Mr. Winnington and Mrs. Hood were speaking of. What easier way to demoralise someone than to say that the work that you do and your organisation is broken? I hate it. Ian Parry's right. This morning, I foolishly pressed the red button to switch on national TV. I very, very, very quickly switched it off, Chairman, and took the opportunity of walking the dog and seeing the beautiful moon in the western sky this morning. National media is doing none of us any good, either our physical health or our mental health, to be quite honest. So I hate the term that it's broken. It's certainly not broken. As far as Nexus Care is concerned, Mr. Winnington, thank you, Mark, you're dead right. The company has shown a 35% growth in the last year of trading. That doesn't mean anything, does it, 35%? That's just a number on a page. We're not dealing with items off a production line. We're dealing with people's lives. And Nexus Care is dealing with the most vulnerable people in our society, in our county, and man, aren't the staff doing a magnificent job. And they enjoy the job. And I'll address one of the points that, thank you, Mrs. Atkins, for your positive comments. One of the points that I'll address is, how do we retain staff? Well, of course, it's financial. We go to work to pay the bills. But it's also about enjoyment to your job and recognition. And I think, you know, speaking of the system being broken, is doing nothing about the value that the staff, the esteem that the staff have. So I think recognition of our staff is massively important. I thank my fellow directors. The board is beautifully chaired by Dr. Richard Harling. And I shall be speaking to Dr. Harling, Councillor Atkins, about activities in the north. Because you're right, it is primarily in the south. I've got a vested interest, as you have and other members have, in the north. And we will be discussing that. But yeah, I'd just like to totally applaud and thank Mrs. Hood for her comments about the staff, because it's all about people, this, isn't it? What magnificent people we've got.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Jessel, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. To answer Councillor Atkins' comments about what's happening in the north of the county. The enhanced home care service that I've referred to earlier, that we're recruiting and staff are being trained at the moment, is focused primarily, in the first instance, on the north of the county. So I'm sure she would welcome that. Obviously, as more and more staff are recruited, it will be a county-wide, but it's in recognition that the north of the county is probably the area that needs that investment first. So that's one thing. Councillor Pardesi mentioned about paying staff. Well, I will just remind members that for this financial year, we did increase pay for home care staff by 12%, and this was before inflation took off. We recognise that they have the increased costs of transport, and for care homes on an average of 6.24. We were working as central government are tasking us to do towards a fair cost of care. So some got more and some got less, but the average for care homes was 6.24%. So that was for this current financial year. Obviously, until we get the settlement, which I think will be our Christmas present, I think it's due just before Christmas, we won't know what levels we can set. But can I assure you, we recognise the needs of the social care workforce and we do whatever we can. We have worked closely, not only with Nexus, but with other providers to ensure that they have the most efficient rounds, perhaps exchanging some of their caseload to minimise the amount of travelling around they do. But we do work closely with them. We are supporting them with helping them to take on new IT, which Councillor Winnington has mentioned with Nexus, but we are also helping care homes, nursing homes to modernise and to use IT so that they can be more efficient and release staff from tasks that can be done by IT to be able to spend more time with the people for whom they care. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 4, final recommendation for the future commissioning arrangements for supported living services in Staffordshire. Councillor Gillian Pardesi, please.
Chair, just to ask, please, on the last bullet point on that page, what is meant by flexible use of staff?
Councillor Julia Jessel, do you wish to speak on this one?
Councillor Pardesi, please repeat the question. Sorry.
Yes, all I asked was on the last bullet point on page 21, what is meant by flexible use of staff, please?
Yes, thank you very much. This report is the final report on a piece of work that was done in January of this year. We sought agreement to work with users and carers to remodel this service. This service at the moment provides the care and support for 509 individuals, but with 81 providers. What we're seeking to do is to change how we commission those services to have fewer providers. 81 providers is not the most efficient way. And the carers and the individuals themselves said that they would like to see greater stability, very admirable, and perhaps longer term contracts. So this report identifies that future contracts will be for fewer providers, but on a longer term basis, a minimum of 5 years, a maximum of 10. That will enable providers to recruit, train and retrain their staff. It gives that greatest stability. But also, as you probably appreciate, there are two elements to this. One is the accommodation, which is often provided by local authorities or housing associations in the majority of cases, and then the service is commissioned to provide those people with the support they need. In working closely with providers, there is an opportunity for what I would call a hub and spoke model, where actually providers can start to use their staff in a more effective and efficient way, and at the same time giving the support to people. So it will be the potential for a more flexible approach, rather than having a very fragmented system that we have at the moment. So this is a prime example of what we're trying to do within social care, which is look at all elements of the service, looking at how we commission. We will be going to more of a block booked process as we do with care home beds now, which gives the market stability. Providers know what they're going to get, gives us greater stability because we know what we're going to pay, rather than the dynamic purchasing system where costs can be very variable. So it gives a range of opportunities to remodel the service, work with providers and carers, and that's what we've done with this report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jessel. Item 5, high needs provision, capital allocation funding. Councillor Colin Greatrix, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a really interesting subject that the MTFS group have only fairly recently looked at. We particularly were looking at the transportation costs of high needs children, how to minimise the exposure of the authority to those high costs. And it was a really interesting subject to delve into. And then you appreciate just how valuable this money is. We were looking at all sorts of things like how many single children are carried, how many opportunities there are for a minibus round to minimise the cost, just how much the special needs involves, the need to travel wherever possible to minimise that. And these 2 bullet points are quite salient in that respect, because the first bullet point talks about trying to get children into mainstream schools, and this money will help with that, because the whole idea of moving children from their home to a distant school is never advantageous. When you bear in mind that the children have got to be able to concentrate and then have a long journey to and from school as well, you know, the more you can minimise the travel to the school, the better. And then secondly, the bullet point, availability of high needs places. A lot of the schools are struggling to find those places, and this money will certainly help on that as well. So again, it's to be welcomed that hopefully the service will be easier and less costly to the authority.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Loughborough-Rudd, please.
Yeah, this issue is one that's close to my heart because I myself was an SEN pupil, so I can speak from the heart on this issue because as a county council, we often play ourselves down on this issue. I think that our existing provisions are doing as well as we can, because this is a difficult issue. And it's stressful for a child with a disability to go to a different area, and I really think that our improvements on we should work on making sure that those with disabilities are not taken out of area. It's particularly distressing. Indeed, while sitting here, this is an issue in my division that comes up quite a lot, because Burntwood particularly has a problem for some reason with this issue, where we seem to have a lot of we don't have enough places for what is increasingly becoming a problem. And I think the County Council is right to keep this funding, because just as we talk about adult social care, it's important, especially with the cost of living crisis affecting these younger individuals. This would be an easy thing for us to go at, and I don't think that'd be right, because our responsibility is not only to our elders, also to our young. And I think as a county council, we should be applauding us for doing what we're doing here, and moving on we must give every. I think we basically all sign up to the principle that every adult, regardless of what they have, should have the right to have an education. And I think as a county council, we should always bear that in mind.
Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Price, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you both for your comments as well. So we sought approval to use this capital investment to support the vision and the priorities outlined in the Staffordshire Special Educational Needs Strategy. And the key areas of focus within the strategy are that children and young people are given the opportunity to be educated within their local communities and the local mainstream education settings as well. So I do appreciate the comments that you've raised around travel and having those provisions within your particular areas. So we are doing a piece of work at the moment to identify where those particular needs are. But the strategy isn't just about having additional special school places. We want to make sure that those more moderate learners are taught within their own mainstream setting. And this also helps towards independence, because I think that's absolutely key. We certainly don't want to see children being transported across great distances as well, because that's not the best thing for the child. And of course, you've also got the cost implication around single-use taxis and those long journeys too. So just wanted to reiterate the point as well that both the Cabinet, and I know that all of you members as well here recognise the hard work that we're doing to support our SEND children and young people. And this forms part of that jigsaw. Both myself and Staffordshire County Council are fully committed to deliver a SEND service that will give the best possible outcomes for our most vulnerable children within the community. I was lucky enough, throughout the year, I visited a great many schools, and the last 2 schools I visited was one in Stafford, which is a special school, which is Marshlands, and then Horton Lodge, the other side of Leek as well, which deals with children with more physical disabilities. And I just wanted to say, as we were talking about people earlier, the tremendous job not only our teachers and TAs have done this year, but also those teachers and staff within those special school places that have gone absolutely above and beyond to support the most vulnerable children within our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The Leader for Council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to pay tribute to Councillor Price for all the hard work he does getting around all the schools that he does. He seems to spend quite a lot of time on the road visiting those schools and just assessing for himself the standards of both the education of mainstream children and also children with special educational needs, of which he has a particular expertise, as many in the chamber know. I was fortunate to get to meet the Parent Carer Forum a couple of weeks ago. And I think the thing that struck me most was the passion with which those parents hold their views about their children. But we must remember that we need to work together, not just parents and teachers, but also the local authority, to come up with plans that give the young people that we look after and that are being educated either in maintained schools or in academies, the best chance possible. But that requires everybody to come to the table. And sometimes I think the expectations of parents can be slightly skewed towards it's the problem of the teachers or it's the problem of the council. Actually, it's in all our interests to come together and work on those solutions. And I would implore people to do just that. I know that Tina has had that issue herself, expressing her views on working together. And I think that we need to push forward and encourage all to come together to get the best outcomes for our children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The next 2 items, 6 and 7, I will take together. Family Hubs in Staffordshire, an Early Help Strategy 2022-2027. Councillor Asfar, please.
Thank you, Chairman. In my division, which has a high rate of child destitution with evidence of family poverty and neighbourhood deprivation, evidence has made it clear that experiencing safe, stable and nurturing relationships throughout childhood, not just whilst a baby, is necessary to thrive. For children to have the best start in life, hubs must offer universal services to meet the needs of both parents and child. However, it is often the presenting problem is not the core challenge that actually child's severe behaviour difficulties might be triggered by. Matters such as parents' unemployment, housing issues or substance misuse can play a key part. Inevitably, another factor is relationship breakdowns, which also play a part, especially when parents separate on a contentious footing. May I ask the Cabinet Member what support and services will be made available for this population?
Thank you. Councillor Phil Hewitt, please.
It all seems very strange speaking from here, from sort of almost the director's box, isn't it, to some extent? It feels that way, but sometimes the subject is so dear to your heart that I do need to speak. As somebody who's worked in the voluntary sector for a large part of my life, working with children, it's a real passion, and it genuinely is. I'm sort of getting too old to do that now, but the passion still is there. Early years help is so incredibly vital. I couldn't emphasise how important it is. My late wife and I fostered babies for many years. We had lots of them. We had, I think, 12 years of nappies and sleepless nights. So I have a fair bit of experience of bringing babies up. And I look at the work and I look at this report and I think, you know, we've got to do this. We've got to do as much support for early years as we possibly can. It really is absolutely vital. A family member was born with an ear problem, with intermittent hearing, and you see then that it sets so far back and the level of help that is required is really important to sort of, for these children to catch up whenever problems they have. But on the other side, I love visiting such as the Family Improvement Board, and I was delighted to see that these hubs, the hubs that are going to be set up, would be supported by the Family Improvement Board and have a fair bit to do with them. So they send me their calendar, and their calendar fascinates me, and I think it's all credit to the work they do with these young children. So I could pop in to a teddy bear's picnic, to a sports event, but apparently I think it's under 4s. So, but I think at the way my knees are, they would I wouldn't bear well. Musical babies, I'm not really sure what a musical baby is. Story time, and what child doesn't like story time? And the one that interested me most was baby yoga. Absolutely fabulous. So, it's vital work they do. Our cabinet must, and our cabinet member, I commend our cabinet member, but we must keep supporting this. We must keep supporting the early years work. It's absolutely vital. And not only that, on top of that, it's all about signposting, isn't it? Because if you have a problem with the child, if you have an issue, then you need signposting. The first person you speak to may not be the one that will help you directly, but they'll be able to direct you onto the person that can help you. And I commend this report. Thank you, cabinet member.
Thank you. As a West Bromwich Albion supporter, you probably enjoy an under-4 sporting event. I've got seat 91, so somebody's pressed the wrong button. Who'd like to put the hand up to want wishing to speak? It's gone off now.
It's Philip White now.
Councillor Philip White, then. You pressed the wrong button.
The label's on there. Hang on. Oops. Thank you. I'll move the label. There we go. System works.
It fell off.
Yeah. As a parent of a 2-year-old, I'm one of the members in this chamber who might benefit from some of these services, and I think it's important to say that you shouldn't make any assumptions about which parents might find it quite hard when they've got young children. Certainly, Laura and I found it very difficult, particularly during the pandemic, and with health problems in our immediate family, meaning we didn't have ready access to help and care from others. It is tough. And these services are excellent because there's no judgment attached to them. There's no sting in the tail. They are just there to help with whatever help you need. And in whatever way suits you. They're brilliant. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to the Cabinet member and to our Families and Children's team for the excellent work they do in this area. It is very much appreciated by people who are glad to know that it's there, like me, as well as those who directly access the services. And I'd just like to make a particular shout out to Hungry Little Minds, which isn't mentioned in here, but it's a brilliant set of emails that you can sign up to as an expectant parent or a new one. And you get a weekly little update on things that you might want to do with your child, and we've done loads of them over the last couple of years, including the yoga. My downward dog is terrible compared to George's, but I keep on working on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Sutton, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And thank you firstly for putting these two items together, because they are absolutely linked. The Family Hub model as we go forward is all about early help, and early help will be supported very much by the Family Hub model. I'd also like to thank all members that took the time, probably I think it was about 3 weeks ago, to come to the Oak Room, when we did a session, a members development session on children's services and journey of a child through that. There will be some follow-up sessions. I know my colleague, Councillor Price, will be arranging one around SEND, which I think people will be interested in, and particularly there will be one that expands on early help, because it's early help is that part of children's social care where members can have an input. The safeguarding, albeit everybody's responsibility, the actual processes are quite set out, and there's a limit really there to members' particular involvement. At the start of that session, AD Natasha Moody played a video, a TED talk. A 7-year-old Australian girl who, well, is absolutely amazing. And she spoke about what parents can do to make every child be able to thrive by the time they are 5. And it is very simple stuff. And I would implore everybody, if you do a search on YouTube, Molly Wright, TED Talk, it'll come up at the top there. 7 minutes long, take 7 minutes to watch that. And it is absolutely outstanding. So I'd also like to move on and thank the leader who has attended a number of children's services around the county, and in particular his visit to Newcastle Children's Centre, and the staff have reported back how grateful they were for that particular visit. So family hubs is really a commitment to deliver services, those universal stuff and that early help stuff that is not all universal, in a slightly different sort of way. It'll be more coordinated for expectant parents, children and young people, and it will be easy to access, and it will be about meeting their needs. Families tell us that they like the help that we already provide, particularly through children's centres and other things. But as a partnership, we recognise that there is more to do as a whole to become more integrated. And we will develop that family hub model to support families with children from 0 to 19. But that's not just a physical place. It is a way of bringing together that support along the lines of the early help strategy, which is available if you do a quick search for members to have a little look at and a read. It's certainly done as a strategy in a style that is really easy to follow. It's not pages and pages of policies and ideas that we will never achieve, and it won't be used to, hold doors open. It's something I'd implore you all to have a little look at. And it works around the right help, the right time, in the right place. And what the early help strategy, which has been developed by the Staffordshire Family Strategic Partnership Board, will provide for the whole family, is a lead person working with the family and everybody working to the same plan, delivering hands-on practical support. And it will start to bring together as a place services such as midwifery, health visitors, advice on housing, family learning and parental conflict support, and many other things. The Cabinet report was available. Members are more than willing to be able to have more than able to go and have a little look at it. And if anybody wants more specific details, I'll happily correspond to them. But just before I finish, can I take the opportunity to thank all children and families staff, particularly at this time. During COVID, they didn't know the meaning of working from home. They were still out there visiting vulnerable families face to face. So just take that opportunity to thank them all, and I'm sure all members here would agree with me with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Bernard-Peters, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members may know about Sir Michael Marmot's report. He identified the need for children to have the best start in life back in 2010. And I recall attending one of those conferences when he stood up and made that point very clear. And it's sat with me throughout my life. And it's right, and I'm proud to be associated with this council, having heard my previous two colleagues talk about the work they're doing to ensure this happens. So I think we ought to be really proud of everything we do in supporting children, because we are their corporate parents for those that are in desperate needs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Leader, please.
Thank you. I didn't want to add anything to the comprehensive answer that Councillor Sutton gave, but I just wanted to add my thanks to the staff. I got the chance to visit the Mary Hill Children's Centre in Kidsgrove last Thursday. What a happy place. The staff are absolutely brilliant. They've got a smile permanently on their faces, and I was delighted to be able to meet not just the staff, but also the parents and some of the little toddlers who were just, and tiny tots who were playing there. It was superb. They were actually playing with cereals, and most of the children seemed to be attracted to the table that had the Cocoa Pops for some bizarre reason. But it was just a wonderful visit, and I was really delighted for all, and thank you for all the hard work that your teams do, both here and out around the county. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item 8, recommission domestic abuse services. Councillor Loughborough, please.
Yeah, I'm glad to see this because as I'm going to say something personal in regards to this, because it would be a miss for me not to mention that around this time last year I was in a domestic abusive relationship. So I know from very personal experience the work that this service does. I know that the integration of different services and it took me a while to think about that because men are not traditionally associated with this sort of thing. But as a county, this is something we need to make sure that the funding, it does worry me a bit that the funding is on a rotational basis because I think this is something we should have on a permanent, because domestic abuse doesn't go away, especially now as it gets colder and the weather gets tighter. Domestic abuse is going to, it's a worrying trend nationally and something that we as a council need to be watchful on. But I think that what we're proposing here is a good idea. I think it's essential that because abuse knows no boundaries, the Downingtown County, Stoke and indeed the West Midlands border are known to this kind of abuse. And it's something that we have to always keep an eye on. And I commend it because I think too much we think about it as something that's an issue that sometimes we don't talk about enough. It's happening now. It's happening in every single district, every single one of our areas, and every single one of our constituents suffers from something like this. And I think that we should make sure that it's always the emphasis of what we do.
Thank you. Councillor Victoria Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'd like to thank the member actually for being so candid. It's not just women; it's males as well. So, by pooling our resources here at Staffordshire County Council with Stoke-on-Trent City Council and the Staffordshire Commissioner's Office, we now have £683,860 available to help victims and families across the county. We obviously have Christmas on the way and the next World Cup game, so we're very mindful that those are triggers at this time of year for domestic abuse. It's coinciding with the Violence Against Women and Girls 16 days of activism, and victim support as well is running specific communications on this as well. There will be continued information on this around where to get support, and our districts and boroughs are running their own campaigns as well. As a couple of my learned colleagues very wisely told me the other day, that this is the 21st century now, and it's really, really saddening to know that we are still having to deal with this, and this is still necessary work. But Staffordshire County Council seeks to help every single man, woman and child who is suffering as a result of domestic abuse. So it's not a good news story, but it is beneficial and it's a necessary story to say that we are in receipt of this extra funding, the 2% uplift, and this will help Staffordshire residents where it's needed most. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Saeed Hussein's button's not been working, so I will now call him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are so generous. I'm just trying to figure it out, and can I beg Council Cabinet members' wisdom in this? When we say £670,000, £450 per annum to recommission to £683,000, 860, which is a net increase of £13,410. That is the increase of just over 2%. Why I am confused, Mr. Chairman, that when the inflation is close to a double-digit time, if you can help me out on this. And the fantastic job those contractors are doing, including our officers, which is tremendous. We know there's so many people out there, and some of them are so bravest, and we heard their story of their endurance as well. And no one should be the victim of domestic abuse and should not live in fear. And it shouldn't be acceptable at all. To minimize those things, we need proper funding. So can I ask the cabinet member once again, does she think this 2% increase is enough, or can she clear this, the amount of the recommissionings for this? Otherwise, it will not add up to maintain the current level of service. Thank you.
Thank you. As the Cabinet member's already spoken, I'm going to allow the leader who wishes to answer. If not, it can be done after the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your question. Just for my benefit, Councillor Loughborough, when you deliver my hearing's going, I'm getting old. So if you could speak slightly more slowly, I might be able to hear you better, and then I could respond to your points more comprehensively. That would be very helpful for me, thank you. In terms of the amount of money that's going into the domestic abuse services, precisely to your point, we haven't had the final settlement yet. Councillor Parry made that clear during his statement. Once we get the final settlement, we'll have a clear idea of how much we're able to spend on domestic abuse services. But I would also point out that actually sometimes the amount we spend on these services is not an indicator of their effectiveness. There are sometimes different ways of doing things, there's different approaches, and wouldn't it be nice if we could remove domestic abuse as an issue in the county, and then we wouldn't need to spend any money on it at all. We're not going to do that, sadly. So this represents the component that we can put to it for the moment, but we'll have a clearer idea once the settlement is published, probably on the 19th of December, hopefully the 19th of December, which means that Councillor Parry and Mr. Salmon get no Christmas.
Thank you. Sad news. Item 9, procurement of a framework agreement for the supply and installation of windows and doors. A framework agreement, quite good words. Councillor Colin Greatrix first.
Well, this is great news. This is absolutely great news. This means that we don't have to talk about procurement of windows and doors for another 4 years, with a possible 12-month extension. Isn't that great? I do think it's also good news that we're talking about offering this as a partnership agreement to schools and other partner bodies in the public sector. I do think that's something we should be doing as part of a Staffordshire family, encouraging wherever we get the benefits of these sort of procurement exercises that we do offer that benefit elsewhere.
Thank you. Councillor Gillian Padesi, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just some reassurance that can we assume that these replacements of doors and windows are not cheap doors and windows, and that energy efficiency will be taken into account?
Councillor Mark de Bill, please.
Chairman. Chairman, I know this is a massively fascinating title, but I think more importantly, just a little bit of background, Chairman. Firstly, it's a level of expenditure around this area of work. We're talking £2.5 million of taxpayers' money over the next 4 years. Councillor Greatrix is absolutely right. It's good that we're working with partners, with schools, emergency services, fire service and other bodies to gain economies of scale and best value. So that's the level of expenditure that we make. So this framework and other frameworks, massively important. Key objectives that I always speak with our officers on is to optimise best value for our Staffordshire taxpayers. I'll address Mrs Pardace's important point there. Absolutely, we don't do cheap, we do good value. We do best quality and best value, and that's really important. I think, secondly, Mr Chairman, it's important to show, to establish with members and show members and the general public that we absolutely have our fingers on the pulse, on the commercial pulse, that we spend money extremely wisely. And thirdly, and I think even more importantly, Chairman, that there's a real emphasis on the local economy, and there's a real emphasis on, yes, they must provide best value, and they must sharpen the pencils up, but a real emphasis on providing work and providing contracts for local operators, local companies and local suppliers. And I think Mrs Atkins asked me a while back, we were talking about something else, maybe general maintenance of properties, I think, Chairman. And Mrs Atkins asked me what the percentage, really good question, what the percentage of work goes to local suppliers. And it was 100% of local manufacturers and suppliers within Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. So I know, members, settle down now. I know this has been massively fascinating and exciting for you, but it's also massively important, Chairman.
Item 10, Climate Change Action Plan and Climate Change Annual Report. Councillor Simon Tagg, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Yes, the annual report and updated action plan went to Cabinet in November. I was pleased to report a further 15% reduction in the Council's carbon emissions, meaning 43% overall reduction since declaring a climate emergency in 2019. This has been achieved by continued energy efficiency across the Council's corporate estate, including the schools. And officers have made great strides over the past 12 months in getting to the bottom of where the Council's carbon emissions are through a carbon audit. And there's also been the positive effects brought on by the changes due to the COVID lockdowns. That's through less travel and also more online working. But there are still many areas of the County Council's operations there where emissions are high. The waste management operations area and also home to school transport. And as members will know, the County Council has taken back the household waste recycling sites into the Council, and there is a plan in place to improve those and reduce waste, particularly from outside the county, and also to members will be aware of the consultation that is taking place over that at the moment, and proposals that have been forward to do that. And also, my colleague sitting next to me, Jonathan Price, is focusing on the home to school transport issue and the carbon emissions there. A lot of the achievements in the annual report, Mr Chairman, have been build a sound base for us to move forward with our ambition of reaching net zero in 2050. Solar panels have been rolled out on council-owned buildings, such as libraries. The Staffordshire Business Improvement Network are helping businesses to adopt and reduce their emissions, and part of that has been introducing a free carbon tracker. A trial of electric vehicles within the county fleet is underway. And we are continuing to roll out the LED energy-saving lights across the county on street lights and in our buildings. And members will be aware of the Climate Change Action Fund, which goes from strength to strength, which since the beginning has invested £128,000 into local community actions for green initiatives, such as installing bike racks at schools to encourage active travel, to upgrading community halls with LED lights, and planting trees and installing green walls. Members will be aware the Climate Change Action Fund deadline this year is the 31st of December, so please get all your applications in so we can make the most use of that money for our carbon reduction agenda. Mr Chairman, there are key performance indicators now around our climate change agenda. They're now in place and we can measure them, and I'm pleased to say that that process started just recently at the Corporate and Overview Scrutiny Committee, which gave a warm reception to this report and the action plan. I'd like to pay tribute to the climate change and sustainability team of officers at the County Council who have taken this agenda and are running with it, and all those officers across the council are also working to reduce carbon emissions in their area. We've taken a leadership role in this across the county. It was a key part of our climate emergency declaration that this council made in 2019. And we're working closely with our district and borough colleagues through a sustainability board. And the partnership is already bringing some fruits, and we'll see in the next year that more come to the fore. We've also held a climate change conference for third sector and community groups, which was well attended, to help them to begin to move towards carbon reduction, and also to highlight the climate change action funds so they could make applications. And I've been taking the lead as the portfolio holder on the emerging cross-sector climate commission for Staffordshire, which more will come hopefully next year on that as it gets up and running. In our updated action plan for the period up to 2025, it contains 33 actions based in 5 areas, and those 5 areas are carbon reduction. We will be aligning our local plans with the boroughs and districts so we achieve net zero in building. We are rolling out a joint EV strategy with our districts and boroughs. This will enable EV to be rolled out, and we hope that the private sector will deliver that for us. And an adaptation strategy for refitting of domestic properties is vitally important. The next one is air quality. We're delivering active travel plans across the county, an air-aware anti-car idling campaign, particularly outside schools, and also a buzz improvement plan. On the natural environment, which is 3, we have a net to zero tree planting policy, which will roll out tree planting on the county estate. And also we're developing a local nature recovery strategy, which follows the adoption of the Nature Recovery Declaration by this council earlier in the year, which needs to balance food production with returning nature, particularly as we know the issues we've got with the supply at the moment. The 4th one is waste. I touched on it earlier, and that is in making the best use of our household waste recycling sites, and also improving food waste collections and also garden waste collections in partnership with our districts and boroughs to improve recycling. And the last one is behavioural change. We have a joint comms plan with the borough and districts, which is going to this cabinet here at the county in January, and we'll bring together more joint comms across the county, including the 1 carbon tonne bubble, which was successfully outrolled across the county, and also a plastic cube recycling campaign. So finally, I'd just like to say we have an action plan and a roadmap to get to net zero in 2050, and it sets out a realistic path, Mr Chairman, to achieve our goal. Particularly because we know we cannot reduce all of the carbon that we produce to zero. We will need to offset through tree planting and other carbon storage as required that comes available. Mr Chairman, we are committed to a sensible and achievable route to net zero, and I think residents up and down the county will support that and get behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Atkins, please.
The Staffordshire Sustainability Board committed to developing a base pledge with 10 commitments for action for formal approval and subsequent monitoring during 2022-23. What I'm not clear about is what is the base pledge, what are the 10 commitments for action, and where can Staffordshire residents read about these commitments and the work of the Sustainability Board, because it doesn't appear to publish its minutes, for instance. And I see that in the document it talks about a 43% reduction of the county's carbon emissions since 2019. Could you clarify how much of that is accounted for by the change in the methodology for waste management and the fact that schools have been taken off the balance sheet by academy status? If I could have clarification on that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Atkins, please.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. This is a really complex subject that I've seem to have spent a lot of time on in the last 3 months. And the 5 themes that are in the Cabinet paper are really the nub of it, actually. But I've been doing the work in agricultural circles at the moment, and because we have got a problem about carbon, but we're great carbon sequestrators as well. But the bulk of our carbon use is from fertiliser production, a little bit from tractors, and then after that we start sequestrating it. And the one thing that there are several things that you can do to get around this. and you can change and adapt the way you work. And one massive change would be to change the way that ammonium nitrate fertiliser is produced, because this is nitrogen, it's in the atmosphere. And Yara, who are a Norwegian firm, are looking at producing fertiliser using hydroelectric and wind turbines to create the heat to capture it. It'll be totally carbon neutral. That creates other problems because people are worried about nitrates in water. But you can manage that through your farming practices. One of the things that came out of the stuff I've been involved with is that there is no carbon calculator that you can really agree on. They all give different sums and different figures, and everybody realises that. So when I hear that we've got a carbon calculator, I think, which one? Because they all vary. The other part of it is that in part of this work, I've discovered that because of climate change, and would you believe we've had the 5-year average of rain in this year? It's just that it falls. We have warm, wet winters and hot, dry summers. So you've got to change and adapt the way that you grow crops. So rather than grow wheat that's suitable for an English climate, you should be growing wheat that's more suitable for the south of France, where they always grow it. It grows quickly and then ripens at the end. And would you believe we've had some quite good yields this year, even with the hot weather. But if you go into spring cropping, bare ground through the winter is particularly dangerous at soil erosion and everything else. So cover crops are the way forward, and you'll get paid to put a cover crop on. That cover crop will sequestrate more carbon than planting trees. So this mad rush to planting trees, which leads to greenwashing, because you'll hear about pop stars, oh, I'm in an aeroplane, but I've paid for 200,000 trees. Who looks after them? They die. It doesn't do it. So there's a real problem with greenwashing. So those 5 themes that you have on the cabinet paper are really quite key, because you cannot take one little bit out and say electric cars are the solution. I went to a National Grid stakeholders meeting in Stoke-on-Trent and discovered what a problem they've got and we're going to have as well. Nobody tells them anything. They weren't told about the feed-in tariff. They're an organisation that has big power stations and disseminates power. If you have an electric car, you will want 7 kVA. If you have a heat pump, you'll need 12. That's 19 kVA in every house. The electrical infrastructure is not good enough to do that. That means our streets will have to be dug up, if that's the way we go. If you go into a service station, which is a better example, which is served by a transformer on a pole to do all the ovens, the lights, the pumps for the petrol and diesel, if you've got 50 high-speed charge points, you'll need a transformer the size of this room. That is the sort of problems that we're facing in the future with climate change, carbon capture, and everything else. Yes, we have a lead to move on, but be realistic about what we can do and what we're facing, and we're all going to have to do this together. It's my birthday in a week. I won't be about probably in 25 years when all this really kicks in. It's all right talking about 2050, 2040. My industry is committed to be carbon neutral by 2040, which is 18 years away. I'll be 90. That is a real challenge that we'll face up. But this is a challenge for the young people of this county, and that is what the future is. And it isn't easy. And some people are going to have to make difficult decisions about their lifestyle and what they expect. It could be hydrogen planes. I noticed you've gone now. Colin was asking the infrastructure manager that we have at the pension panel why they were buying a fuel pipeline in America. It was dead easy to move hydrogen about for the trucks that they need on the interstate highways, because there are some industries that will continue to use diesel and petrol and hydrocarbon fuels, but there are other ways of doing it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain, please.
Two major factors for influencing the human health and climate change are, we believe, tree plantations and better quality air. Mr. Chairman, can the cabinet member help us locally in our county levels give us any district-wise or district breakdown since he introduced this policy? How many trees in which district has been so far planted? And what's the progressions and was the improvement of the air quality in each district, which will give us a better understanding whether we are going to the good way forward. But and on the same note, there are some good news stories about 15% carbon emissions or some things, and we would like to. We are in this together, and we would like to visit with you as well. So can I reiterate my questions again? It will be really beneficial for us to know, especially in my district, how many trees been planted so far since he introduced this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Lunder, please.
Thank you, Chair. I really just wanted to say a few words about what we're doing in conjunction with the County Council within our own district. Councillor Joe Porter has put on various events over the last few weeks and so, and the County Council officers have been coming to those events and supporting what we're trying to achieve within the Moorlands. I think that Philip and the idea of young children, young people getting involved with this is a key element to what we're trying to achieve now. And just wanted to let you know that within my portfolio of economic development and skills, we're going to need to think quite hard about how we're going to try and achieve those by reducing the carbon footprint of those developments. Just to let you all know as well, we've decided to declare our neutrality or zero benefit for 2030. So we've got quite an accelerated programme we're going to have to achieve in the Moorlands. And I just wanted to say that the people that are turning up to some of these workshops now are very interesting. We've got Churnick Valley Farmers Group, we've got our own services, AES and others who are coming to those workshops. And the one thing that came out of it was our close work with schools, which has also been mentioned by others, in terms of they are very enthusiastic, in my experience, of working with us and using education and those elements as a way of taking these ideas forward. And as Philip said, it's imperative that we take forward these ideas, suggestions, concepts, ideas into the next generation. And I really hope that we can work more closely with that, Simon, over the coming year or so, coming up to the elections in May and beyond, because I do think that's something that is something, it's not going to be an Earthshot Prize concept or anything like that, but something similar, I think, would be quite supportive of how we could maybe deal with some of the schools, and that may also help with maintenance programmes and all the rest of it. So I think there's quite a lot of networking and rethinking that does need to go on still, and I hope that we can go forward together in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Winnington, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think I spoke earlier and said that social care and health was one of our biggest challenges. And this is probably our second biggest challenge, not just for the County Council, but for everyone. And as has been mentioned, particularly young people. We've all heard with COP25 and the fact that there are polluters around the world which are massively worse than we are. But I think that Staffordshire County Council, as with everything else, the small things matter and we lead by example. And I think we've done that really well so far. This is not a new thing, and Simon will appreciate it. For years, the county's been looking towards putting solar panels on schools and libraries. It's been working with industry to put biomass in. Staffordshire Place, one of the first buildings in this area that's actually got a biomass boiler, even though they had a little problem a couple of days ago with the smoke from it. But I think that was just a technical problem. But it's great that we're doing these things and continuing to do it. Green areas. Again, districts and counties, we look after massive amounts of green areas. So we're not new to this. We're not suddenly going, oh, let's go and do this. We're doing it already. And I know, as well as everyone else, there is this aspiration to get towards net zero. We've set a date, but the earlier we can do it, the better for everyone. So we're happy with that. We've got to work with districts and partners. I think the Sustainability Board does that. But we also need to work with private enterprise. And the question over here is how many trees have been planted. It's not just about the county, the district, the parishes. A neighbour of mine has just put 500,000 trees in. Not 1 or 2, 500,000. And that's off his own back because he believes that's the right thing to do. He can afford to do it as well, not like poor farmers like myself and Philip. It is so important we work with partners on things like this and that we take a lead. Now, the other thing is, it's not been mentioned and it should be mentioned, is we need to work with industry. We need to make sure that Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent are at the forefront in terms of green technology and green manufacturing. And I know there's a lot of people out there with some really brilliant ideas and business plans. Let's do that. We've got the county farms. Let's work with the county farmers to do what we can there. And then finally, this is something I set up years ago, which was the onshore wind power strategy. I think it needs dusting off and tidying up because what was good then, and I think it was quite negative about wind power, we need to have another look at onshore wind power because I believe it's coming. Thank you and well done to everyone.
Thank you. Could the person in the public gallery please take his feet off the back of a chair? Thank you. Councillor Julia Jessel, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I think some of the comments that have been made actually ignore the fact that over many years, the National Forest, of which I campaigned, and I think it's still in East Staffordshire's local plan, that Burton is the capital of the National Forest. Now, the National Forest has been planting trees. There's been landowners, certainly in the Barton area, Taton Hill, Yoxall, Dunstall, which just provides that circle of green around Inner Burton. There's been hundreds of thousands of trees planted over the last couple of decades. I know because it's been one of my pet subjects, and that improves the air quality for a wide area. There are some very dedicated, responsible landowners who have been planting trees over many years, but also there's the quarry companies. There's Barton Quarry and Newbold Quarry, who, with their restoration plans, part of that is a significant amount of tree planting. So in answer to Councillor Hussain, over the last 20 years, there have been a significant amount of trees planted, and I do hope that he will continue at East Staffordshire my campaign to promote Burton-on-Trent as the capital of the National Forest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Caroline Trowbridge, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I just wanted to quickly say, as we were talking on trees and the environment, and to invite the Cabinet member to Norbury Park Estate, where myself, Councillor Winnington and Councillor Pert went a couple of weeks ago. The gentleman there, Joe, the owner, plants 70 acres of trees per year. He's experimented with different things and discovered that by planting all different trees and by utilising arable land with, it's like clover overlay, it's herbal grasses. Nitrogen fixing, there we are. The farmers would know the actual wording. He is doing an amazing job. All he wanted to do was become carbon neutral, but actually he adds a negative of 5,000 carbon negative to the estate now. Absolutely brilliant, well worth a visit. It's Shelmore Timber, and I could happily arrange for a visit for you. Thank you.
Thank you. The Leader of the Council, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. First of all, I'd like to pay tribute to Councillor Simon Tagg, who has put in a spectacular amount of work on this agenda and indeed has been the motivating force behind creating the Staffordshire Sustainability Board. There are clear lines of communication between the Staffordshire Sustainability Board and the Leaders Board, and those reports, the base pledge that Councillor Tagg alluded to has been through the cabinets of each of the districts and boroughs around the council, or indeed, to the best of my knowledge, all of them. There are some technical questions that some councillors have asked during the course of this, which I wouldn't even pretend to know the answer to, and I wouldn't attempt to do so. I'm certainly sure that Councillor Tagg is better placed than I am to comment on Councillor Philip Atkins and Councillor Mark Winnington's clear technical expertise on that, and I will leave him to do so sometime in the future. And I'm sure that Councillor Tagg will be writing to Councillor Atkins, particularly around the percentages that you were referring to in your question, Councillor Atkins. I wouldn't want to commit Councillor Tagg to anything more than I've already done so, but I think I'm going to do a quite good job of it whilst I'm standing up. I'm sure Councillor Tagg will be delighted to visit Norbury Park Estate to see the great work that's going on there, and I can see that Councillor Trowbridge is now nodding in acknowledgement, so date arranged. How good am I? Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Trowbridge, as Chairman, I'd like to come and see as well, please, if you don't mind. Thank you. Item 11, half-yearly Treasury Management Report for the period ending 3rd of September 2022. Item 12, here to help. Councillor Edgell, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Suicide is something we don't really want to discuss or mention at this special time of year. Christmas is wishing hope for the future, peace for the whole world, love from your family members, thinking of them and the closeness that you share at Christmas time. Let's just reflect for a moment and think about all the families that have lost a dearly loved one this year, especially from suicide. Mental health is a hidden parasite for many people. People who find it difficult to express their inner thoughts and the demons inside take over, and suicide is an easy way to ease the burden. These families that have lost someone from suicide will be feeling this Christmas the heartache that suicide causes. People committing suicide in Staffordshire is above the national average, and that is very concerning for us all. Staffordshire County Council is working with the Samaritans on a campaign to remind people that the Samaritan support line is always open, including Christmas Day and New Year. It is a free helpline. I ask everyone in this chamber, if they know of anyone struggling with their inner thoughts, reach out to them. Just a friendly chat might help them to move forward. If it is too much for you to deal with, put them in touch with the Samaritans, who have professionals at the end of a phone to help. There are many groups doing a great deal of good work on mental health in Staffordshire, including our officers. I'm sure I speak for everyone in this chamber when I say a very big thank you for all the good work that you are doing. On the 21st of December, the Shire Hall in Stafford will be lit up in green, remembering all the people in Staffordshire who have lost their lives to suicide and highlighting the problem. I have asked Neil Carr from the Midland Partnership Foundation Trust if they could possibly light up St George's building with green lights on the 21st. Please can I ask you all to take this message back to your towns and villages and ask if they could light up a major building with green lights on the 21st of December. Ask residents to put a green LED light in their window. People will be able to obtain a green LED light from their local library. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. If residents have a query, please direct them to staffordshire.gov.uk longest night. Please, let's all do what we can to stop people taking away their precious lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Afsar, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to start by thanking the County Council for the Here to Help campaign and the support it's providing across the county. Unfortunately, though, in my division, there are areas such as the Eaton Ward that, despite being in top priority areas, still have no food support services and no sustainable warm space provision. Only recently, I was contacted by the St Chad's Community Centre in the area of my division, where they were asking if we could help them in finding funding to replace the main boiler system at present, which is not working. And the centre could obviously be used as a warm space provision. After consulting County Council colleagues to see if there was anything that could be done here and exploring avenues of any funding available, we've drawn a blank. Could I ask the Cabinet member if they could explore further in this matter? I can provide full details to help this centre get back up and running. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lupper-Rudd, please.
When it comes to Household Support Fund, but first of all, I'd like to commend the member who spoke, Councillor Hedger. Your words on mental health really mean a lot to me. A year ago and 2 days ago, a friend of mine killed himself. 6 months later, I would try. I understand that mental health, and that's why when I come to what I come to, because as a council, we can do all we can about mental health, but it's important to people about provisions. And especially this time of year, already this month, I've had to talk to someone about suicide and refer them to a mental health unit because because the pressures of finance are not just finance, it's pressures on emotions. And that is why I have to praise the Here to Help campaign, because I'm on social media, which is something that I try and behave on. And every time I go on social media, the Here to Help campaign pops up. It's probably the most prominent advertised campaign I've ever seen. And even though it leads to emails at 2 o'clock in the morning from people seeking help. But I don't mind that, because I know from the cost of my friend's death that what happens if you don't reply. And I think that we should also praise the voluntary sector. In Lichfield, for example, in regards to addiction, and indeed Tamworth, there's a charity called Better Way Recovery, which every single day, most every single day apart from Sunday, is open to support those addicts who suffer, and also those with mental health. And of course, in the Lichfield District Council's offices are open. And in my division of Burtonwood, we have opened warm spaces across the area. And I think that the most important thing we have to remember, though, is to watch out for each other. And I know that it is something that we should all do. No one is immune to mental health, and especially now. And our constituents across the county, doesn't matter what affluence they are, doesn't matter what area, are going to be suffering. And I think that it's commendable, the work that we're doing. And I think the Here to Help package, I went on the website the other day to have a look at how comprehensive the scheme is across the county and what direct funding is available. And I think it's good. And I went to compare it to the other councils. The only question I do have is on the Household Support Fund. Why is it targeted in particular towards pensioners this year in regards to, whereas last year it was targeted towards all backgrounds? I'd imagine there's going to be a specific reason for that, but I'd like to know what it is. And I'd also like to, I noted the government's recent press release that the Household Support Fund will continue into next year. I'd like to welcome that, and I hope that those funds can be gotten out as soon as possible to the people who need them.
Councillor Philip Hudson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Perhaps Eutoxis are ahead of the game in a lot of things. We have a local group that meet regularly, and we're putting an index together of which we won an award, where when people approach us, we know which of the help they can get and which group to put them forward to. And also, I'm sad to hear from Councillor Asfar about funding in Burton. Well, I've had no problems in Eutoxeter. I've got money for a new heating system for the Renew Church because that came under the climate change. They were changing. I've got solar panels for another people in Eutoxeter. I've also got £500 given to the Heath Community Centre towards the help that they're giving, where they're giving free food and somewhere warm to go. So the funding's there, Councillor. You just have to look on the County Council website, and also we get emails from the County Council telling us where to go. So the funding is there. And also you've got your borough councillors have CCF, council community funds. Unfortunately, all the money's gone. But one of the criticisms we had in East Staffordshire was that a lot of the Labour councillors in some areas weren't asking for any money. So people like myself got extra money for my area. So the funding is there, you just got to go and look for it. And if people have told you that it's not available and there's no help, I'm very sorry for that advice that you've been given, because yes, it is.
Thank you. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Here to help. I note the first line of this report, which says, at the County Council, we're acutely aware of the pressures many Staffordshire families and businesses are facing due to the rise in the cost of living. So every one of us here is here to help. But one has to question whether we're doing enough. I commend the content of the report, that's fine. But when we start to look at every single one here, I think must be looking at their energy bills and saying, how are we going to meet this? I can say that from my own point of view, my energy bill has gone up by several £1,000s a year. So how are all the people in Staffordshire going to be able to afford, from surplus income, to pay that bill? We, as a county council and as individual councillors, should be looking at what can be done to help people to save energy costs. There are things that we can do, there are things that we can promote. And I think that we as a council should be aggressively promoting the list of things which are quite considerable, and I've had discussions elsewhere within the county about how we might do this. We should do this as a matter of urgency. It is possible for people to be able to knock 10, 15% off their energy bills if they've got the right advice. But where is the advice coming from? It isn't coming from this council, and it isn't coming from anywhere else. So we need to pick up the banner and get out there and tell people how you can save money. And if we're doing that, Chairman, we're here to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Conor Wiseman, please.
Thank you very much. Wileman, I have to say, you know. That Wiseman, I'll take I'll take that. I'll take that. I have to say, this council, to me, is here to help. I have to commend Mark Sutton and Victoria Wilson for the organisation and the distribution of the Household Support Fund. £5.5 million has come from government that is being distributed. A number of different projects supporting people in education, supporting people who are struggling with energy bills. These things are really important to people. And I just wanted to, it's not just about what the words are on paper here. It's about practical examples. I was in a charity shop in my community. It was immaculate. It was a great person who was running it. And about 20 minutes later, we were just discussing things. And in fact, we were looking for funding to see how we could support people. And a family walked in and were expressing some concern about actually being able to support their family and struggling with energy bills. And I was aware of this scheme, contacted that resident afterwards, got the social housing landlord involved, and then they were able to refer in and get some money and a grant for that family to continue on to support their family through the cold weather. And, you know, that potentially wouldn't have been possible without this funding today. So there were some real serious practical examples where families are being supported through the professional referral routes which this funding allows. So for anyone watching this, we are all here. We can all help those residents, and we're here to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark DeVille, please.
Is quite correct, Chairman. And I also commend my colleagues, Mrs Wilson, Mr Sutton, for the work that they do, week in, week out. Good times and bad. We're always here for the people who need us. Just one sentence, please, Mr Chairman. Mrs Edgeler was thanking just about everyone else. I thank you, Anne. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your passion around this subject. Thank you for keeping us totally informed on this massively important subject. And thank you for representing Staffordshire County Council in the way that you do. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor DeVille. Thank you. Councillor Johnny McMahon, please.
Mr DeVille just stole my thunder. and we are extremely grateful for what you do, extremely. Suicide is a terrible, terrible business. And as you can imagine, in a previous life, I saw a lot of it. And it's not just the victim of the suicide. It's the families and close friends. It has a terrible effect on them, particularly children. And we can't forget the knock-on effect. You know, there isn't just one person who's lost their lives. There's most probably, you know, somewhere between 5 and 10 people who've been so seriously affected by it. It has a huge impact on the quality of their life, and they never really get over it. And I think that we need to bear particular concern and particular interest in it over the coming months, because it's well recognized, it's been recognized since the mid-19th century, that downturns in the economy aggravate suicide, and the numbers of suicides go up. Now, we hope it's a shallow recession, and we expect it to be, but we're also told it might be quite long. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us here to be particularly vigilant when it comes to suicide and to promote it in our communities, as Anne Edgeler has advocated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Caroline Trowbridge, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to lighten the mood slightly, that was all. Being as though we are here to help, as was said earlier. I just wanted to thank a lady, her name is Penny Jarvis, who has raised £10,000 for our needy community this year. She held a Christmas party for the Ukrainian families last week, and it was absolutely fabulous. All put on by starting off by doing cakes outside her house. You know, this lady, and many other in the community, you know, I know loads, but this lady particularly has been outstanding. And in the middle of that, she had a heart bypass. So, excuse me making that public, I've just realised what I've done. Can you scrap that bit? But there is truly amazing volunteers as well in our community, and I just wanted to let them know.
Thank you. Councillor Bernard Peters, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really grateful to Philip Hudson for capturing exactly what's going on in East Staffordshire. It does happen to sit in my portfolio, and I can have no stronger advocate or dedicated member of the team than Mr. Hudson to emphasise exactly what's going on in East Staffordshire. I mean, our Labour colleague over there was so far off the mark. It's a real concern as to where his focus is in East Staffordshire. We are going out of our way to support people in East Staffordshire with places of rest, places of warmth, food parcels and financial support where it's needed. So I'd ask him to get back to the script and have a look. And in terms of this facility that needs a new boiler, there's a facility to do it. There's a process to buy one. It's called the Community Regeneration Fund. So, dear me, your residents must be really concerned about your lack of knowledge, colleague.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain, please.
Mr. Chairman, there is so much flavour of politics is coming in there, especially about the East Staffordshire Labour Group or something. For everyone's benefit, Councillor Afsar has followed the procedures, and for everyone's benefit, on the record, the officers has contacted him and got the formal reply, and he is working on it. He is working on the role, and he's not doing anything out of issue. When you mentioned the Burton-on-Trent, there are so many pockets of Burton-on-Trent are suffering, and people are crippling because of these government issues. And please open your own eyes as well, Councillor Peter. Thank you.
Councillor Hussain, thank you, but you brought politics into it there. It is a political chamber where different views are going to be spread across the chamber, and Councillor Ford, you've got to accept that. Councillor Mark Sutton, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The third item on the Here to Help, third paragraph, talks about the Household Support Fund. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to update members on where we are with the current one. But firstly, I'll answer the question, which I think was, why did we decide to support pensioners with the last amount of funding? The rationale for that was what the government told us the funding was for, that we'd have to allocate a third of it towards people of pensionable age. So the current tranche of money, and Councillor Wiseman explained all the rationale behind it and what can be done. So I won't go into that, but I will go into some of the figures. The first bit, educational support element of it, and this is where we allocate vouchers, £20 vouchers to children entitled to free school meals. During the October half term, we issued over 26,000 vouchers, which comes to just over £500,000. And so far for the Christmas period, and bearing in mind we haven't quite got there yet, we've so far issued around about 10,000, but the figure will be similar to the the October half term. And again, this funding goes into Easter as well. Care leavers, all care leavers leaving the care of Staffordshire County Council are entitled to a £50 one-off voucher during this period, and we've allocated 37,000 to that. That's 750 care leavers. The one area, and Councillor Warman alluded to this, was the professional referral part of it, where we've got 1.2 million allocated to that. Some of the take-up of that has been a little bit slower than we wanted. Partner organisations, professionals, and including members can refer into that. There is some criteria which you would need to look at first before you did it, but I would encourage all members that if they do come across families that they feel would be deserving of this, have a little look at the criteria first, and if you feel it's appropriate, then you can do it that way. And I'll ensure that all members have the link so they know how to go about doing that. The next part is slow cooker project, where we've now placed the order for, how many slow cookers was it? Well, not quite sure how many, but it's £600,000 worth of slow cookers. That we should be getting delivery in January, and that will then be rolled out across the districts. And lastly, but not least, 920 eligible households have had money from the Winter Warmth Scheme, which has amounted to 410,000. Can I take this opportunity, like I did before, to thank the staff involved in this, which is quite an onerous administrative task, for which the council does not have dedicated staff to do it. So it has been a case of utilising other staff who have worked really hard in putting this together, and in particular the point about the vouchers that went to pensioners. That was particularly difficult around getting data and stuff from districts, but they got there at the end of the day. And I personally have received, some passed on to me from other members, lots of letters, emails of thanks from people who really appreciated that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Victoria Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got to say I'm absolutely staggered if there are people out there who are saying that there's no help in the county, because that we have so many different initiatives going on. I just want to allude to Mrs. Edgerly's comments first, though, about the people who we've lost through suicide, and those people are never very far from our thoughts, and thank you so much for highlighting that. So yeah, here to help. So we've signposted residents with ways to reduce their energy bills. There are other initiatives on our website. All you need to do is go on Staffordshire County Council's website, and you'll find it all there. People can read up about it. We've initiated the slow cookers project as well. I was in Newcastle, where I was watching people come in and actually picking up the slow cookers, recipes and sachets, showing them how to do cooking at a very low cost. So it's all going on. There's all sorts of help as well within our library service. There's loads of information there for people. There's also the warm welcome at the libraries with the free tea and coffee, and every so often you can maybe even get a biscuit, and people can feel welcome and valued. There's free phone charging and free computer usage in the libraries for users. Also, I know under the health portfolio there are community help points. The boroughs and the districts are helping too. So we're doing a massive amount of work. And as I say, I have travelled up and down the county and seen some amazing schemes. I went to Cannock and Tamworth, Newcastle, been all over the place, seen loads of really great stuff happening. There's a real plethora of help out there, but I would say that really it's the communities that we're empowering. We're empowering the communities not to come to us and ask for a handout, but to say, how can we do this for ourselves? And I can see that happening all over the place. I'm really disappointed to hear that that isn't being felt by every corner of this county, and I'd welcome a conversation with the member that's raised that at any time. So I'd also just like to finally thank the voluntary sector, the communities themselves. These are the people that have stepped up. These are the people that we ought to be thanking, because these are the people that know where the help is needed, and they're the people that can use us, and we can signpost them, and we can give them all the help that they need over Christmas.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Lead the council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. The Here to Help campaign that we are running is done largely over and above the day jobs of those people that we employ here at the County Council. And I want to pay tribute to them. I was speaking to one of our members of staff who was distributing slow cookers in Newcastle the other week. She's literally fizzing with enthusiasm and fizzing with recipes as well. If you get stuck with any ideas of what to do with your slow cooker, she'll be able to give you a whole range of things that you can do, including baking cakes, which I didn't know you could do in a slow cooker. My final word on this, though, is to thank Anne Edgler. I asked Anne to be our mental health champion a couple of years ago when I became the leader of the council, and she embraced that opportunity wholeheartedly. It's not a remunerated post, but you wouldn't know it because she fizzes around the county, reminding everybody of the importance of mental health, and is a fantastic champion and advocate for mental health across this county. And thank you so much for everything you do. You do a wonderful job, and I want to pay great tribute to all your efforts here in the chamber today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we all must by now have noticed the temperature changes in the last few days. We're in that period where we've been enjoying the autumn extension of warmer weather, but now we face the cold realities of a winter approaching, and how cold it can be. So it's even more important that we put out that message there that keeping warm is essential in our county and wider. It's healthy, it protects our vulnerable residents and those in the elderly population, and every efficiency that we save is vital to maximise the money that is spent. This is an amazing scheme, and it segues quite nicely to some of the comments that I've heard here in the last item of councillors that have been unaware, apparently, of schemes in Staffordshire that are there to help residents. This scheme especially is targeted at low-income families and those that are on means-tested benefits. You read in your report there's been 450 new heating solutions to over 400 homes, but to go a little bit further, Chairman, and to delve under the actual help that's been given out through the necessary programme of this, is 5,796 residents have been helped by that scheme to date since 2019. And the officers here have been very successful in putting together a bid to attract £5.9 million to be rolled out over the next 3 years to help families in need, crucially to help them with their fuel bills. In the last few years since 2019, £650,000 has been saved off energy bills, and that's going to be really critical if people are going to be in fuel poverty to help them out this over this winter. So I'm a little bit disappointed in some of the comments that we're not actually doing enough. This as eloquently pointed out by my colleague, Councillor Wilson. It's one of a suite of things that Staffordshire are providing to residents of this county, and it's rolled out across all districts. All districts are helping with this scheme because they can provide that on-the-ground data that we need to be able to roll this out equitably and fairly. It's a great scheme for Staffordshire. It's not only a good news, Mr. Chairman, it's a necessary news to help residents to get through and manage the day-to-day living. So I'm really pleased with this report because it underlines yet again that Staffordshire is a great place to live, and this is the help that we're providing, real help to real people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Novicote. Councillor Derek Hookfield, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought it'd just pop me luck, number 13. You know, lucky for some, unlucky for others. And can I just say, Mr. Chairman, when I woke up this morning and I went down the yard, down into the garden, right, and now it was all covered in frost and ice and everything else. And it took me back when I was a lad. Right, and listening here today of all what's been said, right, about care. And it seems to be the main topic is to do with care homes, with people at home in care, right, with care workers, right, and that seems to be the main topic of the council today. The scheme that's been put forward, I think it's great. Any scheme that's put forward that helps people and helps the elderly and disabled, and no matter what they are, if it helps, is fantastic. Can I just say, Mr. Chairman, the more I look at it, and the more it makes you to think, I'm an old man, right? Everybody hasn't lived my life, right? When I was a lad, and I'll say it again, it was rough. We used to go down the yard to the toilet. It was always frozen up in the middle of the night. Just imagine weather like this, freezing cold, and you want to go to the toilet. You tried to resist it as much as you could, but you can only resist it for so long. And the problem was, right, that when you got there, you couldn't flush it because it was all froze up. You had to pull a chain, it was all froze up. But times moved on, right, and technology has moved on, right? I haven't moved with the technology. I'm old-fashioned still, right? But at the end of the day, you've got to look at it. You've got to look at it from the point that people, and nobody's really hit the nail on the head this morning, people are living a hell of a lot longer. When I was a lad, if somebody reached 60, right, it was a miracle. You never made it. You go by the weather, thousands upon thousands of people died of pneumonia, as well as all other diseases. Now, the scientists have come out with all these wonderful formulas, right, to save our lives. They give us all these pills. If you've got a bad heart, they give me a pill for it. I know, I've got one. Right, and I have a pill. And I'm frank to saying that I have a pill. But I mean, at the end of the day, right, this is what's happening. And the easiest thing in the world, right, and nobody's better at it than me, is to criticise. We can all criticise. We should have done this and they should have done that, and we should put more money into this and more. It isn't money that resolves the problem, it's the people. And when you come to look at these homes, when you look at loft installation, when you look at wall installation, how many thousands of homes, right, in Staffordshire haven't got it? And old people are sitting there with the gas fires on, or they've got the central heating on, or they've been told just to heat one room, but that heat is just going through the walls. That heat is going through the roof. And people don't realise that. Now, this scheme is helping to buy that. There's thousands of people already in Staffordshire who's had the loft installation and had the wall installation. And to me, those are the basic main things. Because heat rises. And if it rises, it goes through the roof. You've got to keep it combined in that one place. There's only one problem. Social care. Because the more we heat the homes, the longer these people are going to live. You know, you just can't win, can you? Right? So just imagine in years to come what the technology will be in years to come. The technology will be fantastic, right? Because then they'll build houses, right, like they've never built before, right, where they'll be kept that warm inside, right? They'll be absolutely brilliant. And can I just say, let me speak on number 13, right? I don't always agree with everything that everybody says, right, because they aren't made like that, but the point is, at the end of the day, the scheme, right, is going to save a lot of people's lives. That's how you've got to look at it. They will save their lives, and that's the main thing, right, that people be able to live longer and enjoy life a lot longer still. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Tagg, please.
Oh, switch the light on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always a pleasure to follow Councillor Huckfield when he's softened you all up ready now, hasn't he? But no, really good points you made there, Derek. And I think just on a personal note for you, Derek, obviously you talk about long service and long life. You're going to be reinstalled as an alderman of Newcastle under Lyme. Obviously you had that conveyed on you a number of years ago, but when you served as a borough councillor in Newcastle, you had to give that up. But now you're no longer a borough councillor, he will become an alderman of the borough again. So congratulations to Derek on that. This item is really important for me, and Paul Northcotter's point. Yes. Paul has really hit this on the nail, really. It ties in with the discussion we just had about the cost of living and then the climate change discussion before, because they're key and go together and have really converged really in this year and in future years now. And just to really from a Newcastle Borough Council point of view, we've been administering these aids to people for over a decade. We're one of the first places in Staffordshire, probably in the West Midlands, that got an early version of the warming homes money way back in I think it was 2008 or 2009. And then it was all about the loft installation and the external wall installation, which Derek has said is vitally so important. But this now goes further, doesn't it? It goes into those changing people's boilers to more efficient and more environmentally friendly ones. Solar panels, which can obviously bring down people's bills, but also reduce carbon. So I think the two agendas have merged, and I'm really pleased to see this item and one may continue. And I think under the leadership of both Paul and Julia, we can ensure, and the help of the districts and boroughs, we can ensure that those people on the lowest incomes and in the most need and fuel poverty get these adaptations that make the difference, not only to their bills, but also to the environment.
Thank you. Councillor Alan White, please, the leader.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Tagg has summed up what I wanted to say very, very succinctly and well, and I can't really better that. I'm just slightly curious about Councillor Huckfield and moving with technology. Have you moved with the times in as much as you've got an indoor toilet now, or is it still outdoor? That's what I couldn't quite deduce from your comments. But it was... Thank you very much indeed for regaling us with your tales of times past. I'm sure we're much better educated as a result. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item 14, all businesses, great and small. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I, from personal experience, make an appeal to our business development team that we keep things simple? People who run small businesses don't have hours to spend filling in forms and in discussions, and I hope that we'll learn from that, make it as simple as we possibly can in the way that we help business. But we may also want to help business, and I perhaps refer to a comment Councillor Wilson made earlier on, that out of population, many of them are over 64 or 65, 64% of over 65s in a recent survey do not have access to the internet. And so if we're looking from a business point of view, if they wish to talk to the over 65s, don't rely on the internet. And I would say to this council, don't rely on the internet if you want to talk to over 65s. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Philip White, please.
Hello, thank you very much, Chairman. So I think this agenda item might have been put in some part as an advert for the Shire Hall Business Centre just over there, which is, I'm pleased to say, up and running with lots of tenants in the building and an even greater number of people benefiting from the hot desking and the other smart facilities that we have there. But we do still have a few spaces left. And it's going to be a great place for any business that wants to locate itself right in the heart of what in a few short years' time will be a comprehensively regenerated Stafford town centre with tens of millions of pounds going in to making the county town what we all want it to be, which is a shining example of what Staffordshire has to offer. More broadly than that, our support for businesses here is extensive. It is done in a partnership way. It is, I hope, done in a straightforward and simple way. The one-stop shop for anybody who is running a business in the county at the moment or wants to start one is the Growth Hub. It's very easy to access. It's promoted by all of the local authorities, all of the business representation groups, the whole shebang. Everybody will point you towards that, and you will get fantastic quality support and advice there. The only other thing that I will say is a big thank you. We've had thank yous to people who work in the public sector today and people who work in the voluntary sector. I'll say a big thank you to all of the workers out there in the world of business in Staffordshire who don't necessarily get as many of those thanks but work just as hard, are contributing not only to keeping their families fed and warm and looked after, but are also contributing to the taxes that pay for all of the services that we provide. So a big thank you to all of them as we head into the festive season. And this council and all of our partners are here to support any of the businesses that they work in, and hopefully in a very straightforward way.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Whittington, please.
Yeah, just very quickly, Chairman, it was, I was pleased that Philip recognised that the town centre is under some rejuvenating in the future. After Christmas, there will be, I went to the presentation yesterday by the builders, there will be a start made on the vehicular access in front of Boots and along that first bit. Then the other vehicular accesses afterwards will be block paved. And then finally, the centre bits will be paved with gold. With gold, definitely. And the one question I asked, which is really important, anyone who's been in the town centre will know that it's a patchwork of tarmac and stone. And what they've said is that they're going to use a specialised mortar that means that when we get the fairground driving over it and other vehicles, that it'll actually take the load. So we're not just improving the environment, we're making sure it's better for the future and should be a long-lasting job. That's well looked after. And it's a shame that more people didn't go and have a look at the consultation because it was really useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 15, HAF. HAF. Councillor Mark Sutton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Holiday Activity and Food Programme ties in very nicely to item 12, which was the here to help. And the way we've done the school vouchers scheme as linked in particularly with this. So I thought I'd give the opportunity to update members around summer, the activities then, and what actually we are doing now during the Christmas holidays. Holidays Activity and Food Programme needs to be delivered, or has to be delivered in the school holidays of summer, Christmas and Easter. So not only do children taking part who are entitled to free school meals get entitled to a healthy meal, as much of part of it is also those activities that help with child development, that help with children's mental well-being. It gets the opportunity for them to meet people, friends and people they don't know, and do the activities together, and all the absolute benefits that type of thing brings that doesn't need me to explain to members here, the massive advantage that brings. I think, as I said before, we have a guarantee that there's funding for the next 3 years. We are just coming towards the end of the first year of that. So that is fantastic. So during the summer, we offered 46,000 places with 53 different clubs across the county with 37 different providers. Some local authorities use just one provider, but obviously with the area that we cover in Staffordshire, that's not possible. So lots of local providers using quite often local to them food outlets to provide that food, which also gives that local element is great. We had a return rate or attendance rate of 63%. Is not as high as we would like it, but it's round about what is happening nationally. Quite a lot of families put their children on and then just don't, for whatever reason, just don't turn up. We will be doing some little bit of work to make sure that the provision is in the places that we absolutely need it, and that will go on, and we'll be able to change things slightly if we need to for summer. During the summer, 625 children attended who got recorded special education and disability needs, and also the schemes partnered with the libraries team around the National Reading Challenge, and 481 children who attended have started the challenge, the Summer Reading Challenge, and of that 427 met the full challenge. 215 attendees were either from Ukraine, were in the care of the local authority, a young carer themselves, or living in a hostel. And some of the feedback from Ukrainian parents was excellent, and providers were positive, and even some of those young people with limited English skills really mixed in and benefited from it. During the winter, the Christmas period, it is a little bit more difficult to deliver. Lots of times parents have got other things, busy time with Christmas, but there are 27 providers around the county, delivering 69 clubs across the county during the summer period, and during the winter period. And again, I've put a couple of dates aside where I'll go and try and visit those and see what is happening. But the benefits are fantastic, and it's a great scheme, and hopefully we'll be able to deliver it for the next couple of years at the very least. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Hood, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Sutton, you're absolutely right. It is an amazing scheme that we offer, and benefit for children and families is incredible. Childhood obesity, mental health. This is all something that these schemes help with, but can I yet again mention those families who, we use the word eligible such a lot today, can I mention those families who are just not quite eligible, are working in full-time employment, some part-time, their wage is not enough to cover childcare. We have children who now are being looked after by people who are not registered. We have an extra burden on grandparents because families are having to go to grandparents and say, can you help me out? I've got nowhere for the children to go. I can't afford a childminder. It worries me that they're not having any activities during the holidays, hence the childhood obesity. Mental health, we all know we're like cars. If we put the fuel in, we perform really well. With children, if they're not getting the right nutrition, which is this scheme most of the time offers the possibility of a hot meal, if they're not getting that right nutrition, they become aggressive and irritable and tired. They can't perform well in school. The burden, again, is put onto the teachers who are looking at their professionals. They can spot why there's suddenly this bad behaviour because the children aren't having the correct food. Please, please, can we find some way that these disgraceful people who are not turning up to these schemes, which makes me so angry, which deprives children who could have had that place but aren't quite eligible, can we find some way of having an absenteeism register whereby we could immediately contact someone who a school's given us a name and say, there's a place here, if you can get there, absolutely brilliant. But I think most importantly, our fabulous scheme, which we offer to all of these lucky children and lucky families, highlights the fact that not all children are entitled to a free school meal. And I notice in a reply, I'm sorry I wasn't here at the last full meeting, I notice in a reply to Gillian Pardesi that she was told that children aged 3 to 7 are eligible for free school meals. They are not. Year 3 children, and many of them are 7 years old, do not get free school meals. And that to me is a critical age for these children to be able to do these schemes and have a hot meal. And it does tie in. I know some of you looking puzzled thinking, where's this going? But the eligibility is reduced. The costs to families now is enormous. The extra fuel bills, some of them can't even afford the fuel for their car, let alone to heat their homes. So please, can we look at this scheme to try and make sure that we can widen it? But I've slipped it in. Can we please get back and ask the government hot meals for all children? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Hewitt, please.
This is twice in a day. But I'm still very passionate about this. The Cabinet member kindly invited me along to one of the schemes at Cannock Cricket Club. It was fabulous. It was full of energy. It was everything you'd want it to be. And this was, I believe, well before 9 o'clock in the morning. So the workers were just brilliant. They were playing with them. They were playing some sort of plastic darts, and the plan was to go out onto the cricket field later to play. There was food for them. It was brilliant, and these schemes are so successful. It's also worth noting, it's not my job to answer for the Cabinet member, but there was a challenge put in about the children that sort of slipped through the gaps, as it were, the sort of the working poor. And I know the Cabinet member kindly met one of our district councillors who's very passionate about this, and he spent a fair bit of time with her so she could understand that. As I say, it's not my job to answer for the Cabinet member, but I know he did meet with one of our district councillors who's very passionate about this and talked quite a lot about what can be done. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Leader of the Council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise really to respond to Councillor Hood's points. First of all, the portfolio holder came scooting down here. You might have spotted that. To talk to your point about the absenteeism, the number of people, children that don't turn up, I nearly fell off my chair when he said it's 37%. And so I've asked him just in the background there, just to look into the absentee register suggestion you've suggested, because I think that's a really sensible idea. People, if we're laying these things on for people and they're not bothering to turn up, it is a bit of a travesty that those people who are on the cusp of eligibility may or may not be able to attend. As far as eligibility is concerned, it's set by government, it's not set by us. I certainly meet with the members of Parliament across Staffordshire once a month, and issues like this where there's some inflexibility laid down by central government, we do appeal to them on a regular basis to say, come on, let us decide locally. This is the point we make as councils all the time. We are local representatives of local people, and we know best what's right for our people, and I think we ought to be given the flexibility to determine local need. To your points about grandparents, I don't know whether it's just me, and I'm going to give Councillor Hutfield a history lesson here now, but when I was growing up, I spent all my holidays at my grandparents' house. And their definition of childcare was to give me a fishing rod, send me down the King's Sedgemoor drain with a packet of sandwiches and say, I'll see you at 5 o'clock. I was only 7. I'm sure it's improved. But the grandparents do a sterling job, and sometimes we fail to recognise the important work they do, because actually they keep the economy ticking over. In many respects, because how many of us have dumped our children at our grandparents' at our parents' house and said, would you mind looking after the kids? I'm a bit busy this week. I think quite a few of us may be guilty of doing that at some point or others in our lives. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item 16, the year 2022. Councillor Julia Jessel first, please. Mr. Button.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I shall be brief because I've already mentioned the tremendous work that people do when they're providing social care. whether it's care homes, home care workers, whether it's the staff that the County Council employ, whether it's the staff working for Nexus. I know that they have felt in the last 2 years since COVID rather undervalued. NHS staff were put on a pedestal, and I know a number of people went out with their pots and pans. Social care workers kept going, still keep going, do such an invaluable job, and I wanted to add my personal thanks to them for all the work that they do, very quietly, very diligently, very professionally behind the scenes, and so many people rely on them. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Leader of Council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We go through ups and downs in life, don't we? And as the years roll by, those who've been around for a long time, Councillor Huckfield, may have seen a few ups and downs. But it has been a bit of a rough ride, hasn't it, in parts of 2022? Who would have thought that Mr. Putin would have decided to invade Ukraine? Who would have envisaged that the post-COVID slump that we find ourselves in would have a bigger impact as it has done? But I want to just stand now just to thank those members of our staff and the wider community for all the work they do. Councillor Jessel very neatly opened the thanks by saying thank you very much indeed to all the social care workers and those people working in our domiciliary care, our care homes. Councillor Whittington paid tribute to those people working at Nexus. Many of you have paid tribute to our great businesses across Staffordshire and the hard work that they do. Our schools provide care for our children and teach our children day in, day out. And it's through their hard work that they grow and thrive and develop into future employees who are going to drive this economy. And indeed, some of them are going to end up looking after people like us when we get old. There are those folks going out on Staffordshire roads, gritting in this cold, cold weather, particularly in the moorlands, where I think it only gets above -15 in March. I went to visit the Ledderidge depot a few weeks ago, and those people there working tremendously hard to make sure that you can get round the moorlands roads in difficult circumstances. And when they're not doing that, they're doing their best to fill as many potholes as they possibly can. That's heavy, dirty work that they do day in, day out. And don't forget, if it's frosty on a Saturday night, whilst you're watching the football, the gritters are going to be out there. I think, given the fact that for a year during the worst of the pandemic, every Thursday, many of us came out and clapped the NHS. Could I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, now to give a round of applause to our great employees, directly and indirectly, who help Staffordshire County Council. And I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful Christmas and a brilliant New Year. Let's make 2023 a fantastic year for all of us.
I move that the report be received. Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 6, report of the chairman of the Staffordshire Police, Fire and Crime Panel. Councillor Peters, will you move the consideration of the report, please? Councillor Johnny McMahon, please. No. Councillor Gillian Padesi, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the second page, the medium-term financial strategy, about halfway it mentions the inspection report and the need to invest in the policing model. We're given examples of investment, but it doesn't say anything about investment in human resources, and I wondered if that was an omission or whether that was actually included. And secondly, it says that if funding doesn't come from government, then efficiencies might have to be explored, including the use of technology. Are we now being prepared for even less face-to-face police contact and more technology, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you. As there are no other speakers, I don't know if you would like to respond to that, Councillor Peters. Okay, please.
Yes, thank you for that question. The Commissioner is recruiting additional officers. There's no doubt about that. There's been a constant drumbeat message historically about we never see a police officer. Well, he intends to address that. But I'd ask you to be mindful that police officers are everywhere around us. They may be in plain clothes, they may be in a plain car, but the police are there, and they're doing a damn fine job, I must admit. What was your second question?
Was, we're told that if funding doesn't come from government, efficiencies would have to be explored, including technology. Does that efficiency mean even more or less police face-to-face contact time being replaced by technology?
Right, thank you for that clarification. We are in the digital world, of course. It won't affect the availability of police, as far as I know, and as far as the panel have been told. But like every organisation, our own included, we're looking for efficiency savings all the while to get the benefit and maximise the available funds that are there. So that the Commissioner will bring forward his intentions regarding that topic, and we'll be asking him what the impact on the community will be. We have no detail yet, but we do intend to scrutinise that point.
Thank you. I move that the report be received. Is that agreed? Item 7, questions under Standing Order 8. Members, 5 questions and answers have been circulated to members and published on our website. In accordance with the usual procedure, the question and answers will be taken as read. I will allow each question 5 minutes in which to ask a supplementary question and to receive an answer. No debate is allowed on the questions. Question 1, Councillor Pritchard to Councillor Tagg. There's no supplementary question. Councillor 2, Councillor Norvico to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Wilson, for that comprehensive answer. I haven't got a direct question, Mr. Chairman. I would like to point out, and I'm sure that many members here, including members of the Cabinet, to thank the sponsors of the Ukrainian refugee scheme, their invaluable help to help them settle into their communities, and also to give them assistance above and beyond their advisory expected duties to provide. They've played a really integral part to embed into communities and to help those refugees lead normal life, free from persecution and threat, not just in my division, but for the whole of Staffordshire. And I'm sure you, Mr. Chairman, you'd like to join me in officially thanking all those sponsors that have helped out since the crisis emerged. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Wilson.
Chairman, I don't think I can say it much better than Mr. Northcott has said it. I think today's theme has been a theme of thanking everybody around the county, hasn't it? And I would like to echo that thanks really for all of those sponsors who have taken those Ukrainian families under their wings at a very, very difficult time for us all. Around the country, 146,000 people have been given a safe place to live from Ukraine, and 627 of those are here in Staffordshire in a total of 288 properties. So Staffordshire is really doing its bit in helping those people. As I say, we are facing difficult times. We don't necessarily have an end in sight. Christmas is on the way, and we're all tightening our belts with cost of living. But yeah, if I can just please just reiterate my heartfelt, genuine thanks to all of those families in Staffordshire that have stepped up and helped those Ukrainians at their desperate time of need. Thank you.
Councillor Charlotte Atkins to Councillor Julia Jessel, please.
Yes, thank you. The reason I asked this question is because one of my local help points, Haregate Community Centre, received the big pop-up banner. I think it's probably in the cupboard, to be honest. And since then, they've had nothing from the County Council. Now, the Haregate Community Centre, which is actually in Gillian Heath's division, but I have a lot to do with, is run on a shoestring. They have very few staff. It's mostly run by volunteers. And I think they will struggle to be able to deliver the services listed on the County Council website. They're already getting all sorts of inquiries, but as yet, I don't think they've had any support. So I'll be looking forward to hearing about what support they will be getting from the County Council, because I think that when you have a very busy community hub, and the Haregate Community Centre does a fantastic job, they took on the County Council's community food base and have now running it very cost effectively, really on a shoestring. So they do fantastic work within the community. And now they're getting sort of phone calls about, you know, where can I find a gardener, can I find a cleaner? And they can't also help people with internet access, etc., because they just don't have the facilities to do that. So I think it would be useful if the help points knew what help they could secure from the County Council. It appears from the answer that that is forthcoming. But I do think that help points are very different organisations. Some are libraries, will have full-time staff, but this is a community, a very, very busy community hub, which runs from a hand-to-mouth situation financially. And I just don't think that without additional support, and I see that training's on offer, that it would be very difficult for them to fulfil the full remit of a community help point. Thank you.
Councillor Jessel, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. And Councillor Atkins has quite rightly identified that depending on where the help points are, they are at different stages of development to have different facilities available. One of the things that I thought would be helpful, and I did mention it earlier on, is the bag of tricks, which are about to be distributed to the help points. And I would suggest to members that they help themselves to have a look. This is a system whereby they're small adaptations, small pieces of kit that people can look at and try before they buy. They're low-cost pieces of equipment because, as we know, part of the health points is actually signposting to people to where they can get help, but actually where they can purchase little pieces of kit to help those day-to-day living tasks that they're finding increasingly difficult to do. I noticed there's a hook on a long handle, I think, to pull your dress zip up, which I thought, that's very useful. They're useful, practical tools. I think there is training for staff, for volunteers that operate these help points. And in many ways, although they set up in October of 2020, because of the COVID pandemic, the use of the help points was fairly slow. Now, more and more people are using them, and I think it is something we do need to look at, that there isn't one model fits all, and I think that's the point you're making, and we will look to make sure that they have got the advice and the training to be able to provide that invaluable service, because I anticipate people, once their profile is raised, more and more people will want to use the help points, those who are not able to access our website digitally, and we do need to make sure that they operate effectively, because this is how we can help people to help themselves to live more independent lives. So a valid point, but do please take the opportunity so that if you're asked, what is a bag of tricks, as I did, you can see for yourselves. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Padaisi to Councillor Jessel, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, when will this administration and government accept that we need urgent action in adult social care right now? Our NHS and social care systems right now are broken and on their knees. And for those who are offended by the term broken, they're either in denial or maybe even unaware of the seriousness of this crisis. If we have care homes with empty beds because we cannot find the care staff, if we have care staff not able to provide packages for people to be discharged home while people are waiting in ambulances and dying, if that isn't broken, I don't know what is. And anybody in this chamber can twist my words as much as they want and say, I am demoralising.
Please, she's asked a question. She's just now emphasised what the question all is about. Please give her the respect to ask her the question.
Anybody can twist my words if they want and say that I am demoralising staff. No, staff are being demoralised because they're not being valued, because they're not being paid the appropriate salaries. It is not me telling them, why don't you go to supermarkets for more money and less stress? And it is all very well for the leader to say, let's join hands and sort this out together. Well,
Councillor Daisy, I think we're now getting to the element of debate. You've asked a question.
Okay.
Please, no, please sit down now. You've asked a question.
My final point.
No,
Chair,
well,
people
ask
have
it as a
gone
question then, please. A question.
I have asked, Chair, I was told earlier that we need to join hands to sort this out. My suggestion is additional payment.
Councillor Daisy, please listen to me. Sit down and listen. No, you sit down as well, please. Sit down, Councillor Field. I asked a question, which is not a debate. If you wish to ask a question, ask. No, please listen. I haven't asked you to speak yet. You will listen if you wish to speak. You asked a question at the beginning, and I gave you a bit of leeway to emphasise your question. Your question's been answered. Councillor Jessel, please respond.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I will answer this in two ways. One, we are in constant contact with colleagues in the NHS. Certainly, the University of North Midlands is under pressure at the moment, but it is not a simple, it's down to discharges and access to social care. There are relatively few people who are waiting for packages of care. It's a very small number. 20 years ago, my day job was as an urgent care manager in the East Midlands. And part of that job was working across the whole gambit of primary care, secondary care, community care, ambulance services, the voluntary sector. And the difficulties acute hospitals get themselves in is not just down to social care. We do work very closely with our NHS colleagues, with our partners, Midland Partnership Foundation Trust. There are emails going past my system at the moment where one of the issues is access to transport to take discharged patients home. And our Chief Executive is asking our staff if we can come up with ideas to perhaps relieve that situation. You're looking at it, I'm afraid, in a simplistic approach. I know from having worked in the system, it is very complex. If people can't get access to primary care, they will end up going to hospital. Hospitals, I don't know whether any of you have experienced it, I have waiting for hours to get your prescription tablets. You can wait 6 or 7 hours. It's a whole system approach. And the NHS, I can remember not that many years ago, their budget went up to 33 billion. I think we're up to 167 billion. The more money you put into the NHS is not necessarily the solution. And I think everybody, including the public, is beginning to say pouring more money into it actually isn't the solution. There are huge layers of bureaucracy within the NHS that, my personal view, needs to be eliminated. I'm I read the headlines like everybody that they're going to cut back on NHS England. So it isn't a simple solution. We are doing what we can. We do work closely, and it is that closer working that actually helps the machinery to go, and it's patients who are in that machinery. But to just say it's down to social care, just saying it's down to wages is not the answer. It's a part of it, but it's not the total answer. And, you know, the situation that we have with acute hospitals is down to multiple factors. We are trying to work with them and help them with solutions, but I would ask that you don't just hang on to the national headlines, because that's not the situation here. As I say, there are relatively few patients who are classed as delays to discharge of care. So that is my response, Chairman. I think it's very difficult to find solutions when there's a lot of, obviously, strong passion and strong feelings, but that are not based on fact. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jessel. Thank you, Councillor Pedesi. Councillor Afstar, please, to Councillor Philip White.
Chairman, thank the Cabinet member for his reply. I just don't quite feel it's answered the question. If you can provide me some financial figures, maybe going back probably 2 years, if 5 years is too far to go back. Something I've been asked at a parish council meeting regarding Section 106 monies. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Councillor Afsar. The reason why the information hasn't been presented in the answer is that, as the answer explains, it isn't currently collated in that way. But I think true to the way that we like to do things in our working together as colleagues in East Staffordshire, even though from different political parties, I'll be delighted to get that drawn together for you. And if there's anything further that I can do to help vis-a-vis that parish council inquiry, I'll be delighted to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8. Does any member have a petition they wish to present? Item 9, exclusive public. We don't need to do that because we've got no matters there. Before we finish, can I just say it's our last full council meeting before Christmas. We've give many thanks to many people. Can I thank you all as members for making my job so easy in the chamber? It has been, so thank you very much. Can I also thank my principal officer sat before me, Councillor Debbie Cox, who is in the Civic Office, who's made it very, very easy, everything we do. Thank you, Debbie. In your pigeonholes downstairs, there's a Christmas card from myself and my wife, who's in the public gallery. Wish you all a happy Christmas. Can we all, everyone here, have a great Christmas? I know there are a few committee meetings to go before we all do break up, but have a happy, peaceful Christmas. Let's have a lovely new year. And whatever 2023 brings, we get through it. Thank you, everybody.